You may be lying in bed now, letting the silence slowly fold over you, like soft linen warmed by candlelight. Outside your window, time flows unnoticed, like a quiet stream beneath moonlight. You feel your body beginning to sink into stillness, as if the breath of the earth is gently matching your own. Tonight, we'll drift through stories, not of punishment, but of balance, of choices returning like wind in the trees, of karma, as ancient minds once saw it. These are not tales of fear, but gentle mirrors held up to the soul. Stories from the forests of India, the mountains of Tibet, the riverbanks of Babylon, where people once whispered that every action was a seed, and every seed would bloom, whether by sunlight or by shadow. Let us begin, not to judge, but to remember, to listen, to feel the timeless rhythm of cause and return. Long before the word karma crossed the borders of language and settled softly into Western minds, it was already being shaped in the quiet minds of sages beneath ancient skies. In India, where monsoon rains fed the soil and the stars were watched like scripture, the earliest Vedic hymns hinted at something deeper than ritual, something that moved behind action, not a god watching, but a pattern unfolding. The Vedas speak often of Rute, the cosmic order, a silent harmony to which everything returns. It was not yet karma as we know it, but it was the breath before the word, a recognition that what moves outward eventually returns. Over centuries, that rhythm deepened. As early Hindu philosophy developed, karma became more than an idea. It became a law, not one imposed by authority, but by nature itself. The Upanishads, written between 800 and 200 BCE, offer some of the first direct teachings on karma. They speak of it simply, that a person becomes what they do, that one's actions, intentions, and even thoughts, subtle as mist, leave impressions, shaping the soul like water shapes rock. Karma was not about reward or revenge. It was not divine surveillance. It was continuity, a soft, invisible thread between this breath and the next, between this life and the one that might follow. You imagine a person planting a seed in a field. Not all seeds bloom quickly. Some may wait for rain, others for warmth, but they do not vanish. And neither, according to these teachings, do our deeds. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth gave karma its depth. Each life, shaped by the echoes of the last, not fate, but momentum. A soul carrying with it the weight or lightness of what has come before. It's not a trap, these texts suggest, but a mirror, a reflection that offers a chance again and again to act with more care, more presence, more love. The word karma itself means action in Sanskrit, but always within it is the understanding that action never ends at the point of doing. It ripples, quietly, like a hand grazing the surface of still water. The ripple spreads, touches shores, and one day returns to modern ears. Karma can sound like a system of punishment, but the ancients framed it more softly. It was not retribution. It was consequence, not from wrath, but from connection. You did not suffer because you were wrong. You suffered because something remained unresolved. Something needed understanding, healing, balance. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is written, as a man acts, so does he become. As he behaves, so he is. Not as a warning, but as a reminder. You are always shaping yourself through every kindness, every cruelty, every moment of silence. And in these teachings, intent matters. A deed done with love carries a different weight than one done with greed or anger. Just as two identical stones dropped into a river might create different currents, depending on the depth and the shape of the bed beneath. Imagine this now, someone feeding a stranger with no thought of praise, versus someone doing the same act with pride swelling in their chest. The world may see the same gesture, but karma listens not with eyes, but with silence. With truth. By the time the Mahabharata was composed, the great epic that holds the Bhagavad Gita. Within it, karma had become central to understanding life's unfolding. The Gita would later offer a deeper, more nuanced view. But even here, early on, karma is already recognized as more than reward. It is a teacher, a mirror, a path, and paths can be walked differently. The earliest karma teachings did not demand perfection. They offered possibility. Even if past actions have shaped your present action is still yours. The future remains soft, still shifting, like wet clay. In this way, karma brought hope, not fear. It suggested that even in sorrow, there was movement. Even in mistake, there was learning. That no action disappears, and no soul is trapped forever. Because life is not linear. It is circular. It returns, like the seasons, like the breath. So, when a person suffered, the question was not, why is this happening to me? But what seed have I sown, and what can I learn from its bloom? Not in shame, but in understanding, in compassion for the self, and for others who walk with their own unseen seeds. Imagine the quiet dignity of this worldview, that nothing is wasted, that even in silence, something grows, that no act is forgotten by the world, even if forgotten by the mind. It is a sacred accountability, softened by time, a personal law of balance. Over time, karma would grow more intricate. Later schools of Hindu philosophy, like the Vedanta and the Mimamsa, would debate its mechanisms, whether actions are stored in the self or in cosmic memory, whether karma can be burned through meditation or only through rebirth. But in the earliest teachings, the heart of it remains simple. You are part of a rhythm. You shape the world, and the world gently shapes you in return as you drift deeper into the stillness of night. You might wonder, what have I shaped today? What might return, not to judge, but to teach? What quiet seeds lie waiting beneath the soil of your own soul? Let them rest. Let them breathe. Let them bloom when they are ready. The wheel of gentle return. India's earliest echoes. In the beginning, there is movement, not loud, not sudden, but steady, like wind reshaping the dunes, like the quiet pull of the tide. In ancient India, this movement had a name, not one shouted from mountaintops, but spoken gently among sages and seekers. Karma. It did not mean punishment. It did not mean reward. It meant action, and more than that, it meant return. Before temples rose, before doctrine formed, before karma became a global idea, it was already present in the Vedas, the oldest sacred texts of India. In these hymns, spoken in Sanskrit over 3,000 years ago, there is no fixed doctrine of karma as we know it now, but there is a rhythm, a pattern, a trust in order. The seers spoke of rute, the universal flow, the way the stars moved, the rains fell, the fire rose, and the heart of man echoed that same design. RTA was not enforced by any single god. It was the very structure of being, the framework upon which truth, nature, and dharma rested. And within it, karma began to take shape, quietly, almost invisibly, as if it had always been there, simply waiting to be named. As time passed, the Upanishads emerged. These mystical texts did not seek to please the gods with ritual. They turned inward. They asked deeper questions. What is the soul? Where does it go? Why do we suffer? In these writings, composed between 800 and 200 BCE, the soul, the Atman, is said to travel through lifetimes, not as a punishment, but as a continuation, like a river that never forgets its source. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad offers one of the earliest teachings of karma. A man turns into something good by good action, and into something bad by bad action, not as a sentence, but as a law of nature, as simple and as profound as a seed becoming a tree. This is not retribution, it is reflection. What you do, you become. What you choose becomes the shape of your next breath, your next body, your next chance. In these teachings, karma is inseparable from samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Life is not a straight path. It circles. It returns. Again and again, the soul takes form. And again it is shaped not by external forces, but by its own actions, its own intentions. You can imagine it like this: a person walking through a vast forest. Each step presses into the earth. Some steps are gentle, others heavy, but none are forgotten. The forest remembers, and in time, the path beneath their feet begins to reflect their way of walking. That is karma, not divine punishment, but divine memory. And yet the ancient texts say it is not merely the action that matters, it is the intention behind it. A cruel act done in ignorance carries a different weight than one done with full awareness. Just as a kind word, whispered in love, is not the same as one spoken with pride. In the Chandogya Upanishad, it is said, "Those whose conduct has been good will quickly attain some good birth, but those whose conduct has been evil will quickly attain an evil birth." But it does not call this a curse. It calls it learning, a continuation, a soul returning to what it has yet to understand. And in that, there is hope, because if one's past shapes the present, then the present also shapes what comes next. Every moment becomes a doorway, every breath, a brushstroke on the painting of one's future. This is where the idea of dharma enters, not as duty forced upon a person, but as harmony. Each soul, say the texts, has its place, its role, its right way of being. To live according to one's dharma is not blind obedience. It is alignment, a way of walking that does not disturb the river's flow. When one acts according to dharma, the ripples they send into the world are soft, balanced, like leaves falling on still water. But when one strays, out of greed, or fear, or ego, the ripples grow sharp, the water stirs, the cycle continues, but the lesson must return karma. Samsara, dharma, these are not separate laws. They are three notes of the same melody. The soul moves through lives, shaped by its choices. Those choices either deepen suffering or move it closer to liberation. Moksha, the freedom from the cycle, was never seen as a reward for good behavior. It was the natural end of understanding. When a soul sees clearly, acts clearly, and holds no weight from the past, it is no longer pulled back by karma. Like a bird no longer tethered by string, it rises. But until then, karma remains, not as punishment, but as pattern, as presence. In the Bhagavad Gita, composed slightly later, the teaching deepens. Lord Krishna speaks to Arjuna, a warrior, paralyzed by doubt. Krishna teaches him of karma yoga, the path of action without attachment to outcome. Do your duty, he says, but let go of the fruits. Act with purity, not ambition. This is the soft mastery the ancients aimed for, not to stop acting, but to stop binding oneself through desire and fear. When action is offered, not grasped, karma no longer clings. You begin to sense the beauty in it, the tenderness of a belief that holds no final damnation, no eternal reward, just movement, return, learning, a soul refining itself gently, across time, and it is never too late. Even in darkness, a single choice can plant a new seed. One moment of compassion, one honest word, one quiet pause before anger, and the wheel shifts. A new pattern begins. There are many forms of karma described in later philosophy. Prarabdha karma, already ripening in this life. Sanchita, the storehouse of all past karma. Agami, the karma being formed now. But in these early echoes, what remains is the essence. Everything matters, but nothing is fixed. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are simply becoming, and the world, in its silent grace, will always return to you what is needed, not to break you, but to balance you. So now, you lie in the quiet of this moment, and you wonder what has followed you into this life, still waiting to be understood. What have you left behind that still longs to bloom? What will you do when the wheel turns again? Let the question stay open. Let the answer come softly, in time. Siddhartha's river, the Buddha, and the quiet path. In the stillness of early morning, before the sun burns away the mist, a young man sits beneath a fig tree, his legs folded, his breath steady, his mind silent. This is Siddhartha, not yet the Buddha, not yet the voice of a path, just a seeker, unmoved, beneath the Bodhi tree in northern India, waiting for insight to rise, not from the heavens, but from within. What he finds there will change not only his own life, but the shape of karma itself. Before this moment, Siddhartha had walked many roads. He had grown up as a prince, shielded from suffering. Then, one day, he saw it. An old man, a sick man, a corpse, and finally, a monk walking in peace. That was the beginning of his turning. The world, he realized, was full of sorrow and, yet something deeper shimmered behind it. He left his palace. He left comfort. He searched and, what he discovered, after years of wandering and deep meditation, was something both ancient and new. Karma, he said, was not a punishment waiting to strike. It was the gentle pattern of cause and effect, a mirror held up to the heart. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha explains, it is volition, monks, that I call karma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, and mind. Volition, not just action, but intention. This is where the shift begins. In earlier Indian philosophy, karma was already seen as natural law, not divine punishment. But here, the Buddha places it entirely in the hands of the individual. You are not a prisoner of past lives. You are not weighed down by ancient guilt. You are simply here, shaping your next moment by how you meet this one. Imagine a pond. Each thought, each choice, is a pebble cast onto the water. The ripples may be small, but they move outward. They touch everything. To the Buddha, karma was not a debt ledger. It was a field, and every intention was a seed. Some seeds blossom into peace. Others grow thorns. But all of it is within the grasp of change. That is why he taught the Noble Eightfold Path, not as commandments, but as tools. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Each one, a way of shaping karma with awareness. Each one, a soft footstep toward liberation. In this view, karma becomes a teacher. When we suffer, we are not being punished. We are being shown. When we act with kindness, we are not earning points. We are quieting the mind, freeing it. Over time, the mind becomes less tangled, the heart lighter, and with it, the wheel of samsara, endless cycle of rebirth, begins to slow. In one early discourse, the Buddha compares a person's karma to a lump of salt dropped in water. If the water is small, the salt makes it undrinkable. But if the water is vast, the salt dissolves into insignificance. In the same way, even a heavy karma can be softened by a vast, mindful life. This view carries no fear. It carries no shame, only clarity. You begin to see, every breath is a choice. Every pause before anger, every honest word, every soft refusal to harm, these are acts of freedom. Even thoughts matter. In Buddhist teachings, karma is not just what you do, it's how you speak, how you think, how you aim your attention. A moment of greed, a flare of jealousy, a silent wish for harm, all leave impressions, all leave ripples. But so does compassion, so does patience, so does letting go. In this way, karma becomes moment to moment, not just a story from another life, but a reflection of how clearly we see right now. The Buddha also spoke of kema vipaka, the fruit of karma. Some ripen soon, others take time. A good deed today may bring peace in this life, or the next, but it always moves, always unfolds. He did not promise escape through belief. He did not speak of divine forgiveness. He simply showed the path of seeing clearly and acting gently. In the Dhammapada, it is written, "Mind precedes all things. They are mind-made. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves, not because a god rewards it, but because that is the nature of things. Just as fire burns and water flows downhill, karma follows the shape of the mind that casts it. This understanding brings a certain calm, a soft, grounded responsibility. You don't need to fear your past, but you do need to understand it. You don't need to earn peace, but you do need to turn toward it deliberately." The Buddha called this path the middle way. Neither indulgence nor self-punishment, neither extreme of denial nor grasping, just awareness, just enough, and slowly the wheel turns less. He also spoke of karmic purification, not through rituals or sacrifices, but through consistent, conscious action. When a person sees their own anger and meets it with mindfulness, when they see their own craving and soften it with stillness, they begin to cleanse not just the present, but the momentum of countless past lives. Karma then becomes not a burden, but a map. It shows you where you've been. It hints at where you might go, and it asks you, always, how will you step now? Even monks who had committed violence in past lives, or even in earlier parts of their own, were not cast out. If their present mind was pure, if their present action was kind, the Buddha welcomed them, not to forget their past but to release its hold. This is why the teachings of the Buddha were so gentle and so exact. He did not deny suffering. He acknowledged its roots: craving, aversion, ignorance, and he gave tools to unroot them. Through vipassanic sight, meditation, a person learns to see the impermanence of all things. Sensation, thought, emotion, each one rising and passing like waves, and when the mind stops grasping at them, karma softens, the soil clears, and in its place, peace. This peace is not mystical. It is not reward. It is simply what remains when the conditions of suffering fall away. And still, even at the end of his life, the Buddha was clear. This is not a belief to be clung to. It is a path to be walked. Karma is not meant to frighten, or bind, or control. It is meant to clarify, to open the heart. Imagine now, a river. You are standing on its edge. The water flows not in punishment, not in reward, but because that is what water does. If you step into it with awareness, if you learn how to float, how to guide your steps, the current no longer pulls you, it carries you. This is the vision of karma that the Buddha leaves behind, and in the quiet hours of night, as your thoughts begin to slow, you might begin to ask yourself, what intentions will I plant tomorrow? What ripple will I leave behind? What can I let go of right now that no longer needs to follow me? Let the question stay open. Let the river carry it. Tibet and the thread between lives. The wind moves differently in the high places, above the tree line, above the noise of cities, and beyond the edge of ordinary life. The rooftop of the world hums with a stillness shaped by centuries. In the Himalayan folds of Tibet, monasteries perch on cliffs like quiet watchers. Their walls, faded by snow and sun, carry chants that have never fully stopped. Each morning, monks in saffron and maroon gather in the cold hush of stone halls. They breathe in unison. Their voices rise, deep and rhythmic, not performances, but invocations, chants, prayers, syllables, spoken for the benefit of all beings. And behind these sounds lies a view of the soul's journey more intricate than most ever hear. In Tibetan Buddhism, karma is not just a moral ledger. It's a movement, soft and ceaseless, that shapes the spaces between lives. That space has a name, Bardo. Bardo means intermediate state. It is the in-between. The passage not only after death, but between any two states of being, birth and dying. waking and sleeping, certainty and change. Most famously, though, the bardo is the realm one enters after death, before rebirth. It lasts 49 days, not on a clock, but in experience. A realm of vision, sound, and consequence, where the soul is no longer anchored by a body. Here, karma becomes visible. It unfolds not as punishment or reward, but as the very shape of perception. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, offers guidance for this crossing. Not to control it, but to meet it with clarity. It teaches that, at the moment of death, the ordinary mind dissolves. There is light, pure, dazzling, unshaped light, the true nature of consciousness. Most cannot bear it. Conditioned by lifetimes of clinging and fear, the soul recoils. It turns away from the vastness of its own truth. From this turning begins the passage through the bardo. In the early days, visions appear, peaceful deities, luminous, serene, radiant with compassion. These are not gods in the Western sense, but mirrors of one's own awakened mind. If the soul recognizes them, it merges. Enlightenment becomes possible. But if fear rises, if confusion clouds the mind, then the next visions come. Wrathful beings, terrifying and loud, with multiple heads and eyes and weapons. They chase, they roar. Yet these too are mirrors, not punishers, not demons. They are the fierce expressions of untamed karma, of thoughts, actions, desires, magnified now in the absence of the body. One by one, these visions pass. The soul is not judged. It is not sentenced. It is drawn magnetically, unconsciously, toward the next birth, pulled by the subtle imprint of all it has done, feared, loved, or longed for. Here, karma is not a scale. It is a wind, and in Tibet, people prepare for that wind long before death ever comes. Monks meditate on impermanence. They contemplate their own dying, not with dread, but with discipline. They recite the Bardo Thodol aloud, not only for the dead, but for the living, so that the words become familiar, the imagery less foreign. Some meditate in charnel grounds. Others visualize the wrathful deities, over and over, until fear dissolves into recognition. In these practices, karma is softened, not erased, but understood. Even householders, those who live outside monastery walls, carry these teachings close. It's not uncommon for a Tibetan family to whisper guidance to a dying loved one, to remind them to let go, to speak the name of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, to gently urge the soul not to cling. For 49 days after death, offerings are made, butter lamps are lit, mantras are recited, not as rituals of mourning, but as pathways of support, a way to hold the soul in light, wherever it may be traveling. And for the Tibetans, rebirth is not random. The next life, whether as human, animal, spirit, or something else, unfolds from the momentum of past intentions. If the mind died, calm, it moves with ease. If it died angry, confused, or attached, the pull becomes heavier, denser. But the thread is never broken, even if the soul turns from light, even if fear wins in the bardo. There is always another dawn. There is no eternal hell in Tibetan cosmology. Suffering exists intensely so, but it is always temporary. Even the darkest realms, the coldest voids, have an exit. Eventually, karma exhausts itself like a fire that runs out of fuel, and from there, a new body, a new chance, a new forgetting, because most do forget. Very few remember the bardo, the visions, the light, the teachers along the way, but the imprint remains in dreams, in certain fears or fascinations, in the unspoken longing that some feel from birth, as if they've come from somewhere else. The Tibetans do not argue about whether the bardo exists. They live as though it does, because, to them, this very moment is already between what you were and what you will be, between ignorance and awakening, between one thought and the next thought, and karma, moving through it all, is not a threat. It is the gentle shape of becoming. You begin to feel this thread differently now. Not heavy, not sharp, but quiet, like breath on a window. Like wind through a prayer flag frayed at the edge, but still waving, still calling, still connected. The Bhagavad Gita, action without attachment. There is a field, flat, open, and waiting. Morning hovers at the edge of light. The wind is still. The air carries no sound but breath, and the weight of what's about to begin. This is Kurukshetra, a real place, a real battle, but the war is not the center of the story. The center is Arjuna, a warrior, a prince. His bow hangs slack in his hands. Across from him stand his cousins, his teachers, even old friends, all on the opposing side of the battlefield. The cause may be just, the duty clear, but Arjuna is not steady. His body shakes, his heart resists, and then, a voice beside him, a charioteer, calm, present, not commanding, but clear. It is Krishna, divine, yet close, a god in human form, yet speaking like a companion. And in the stillness before the first arrow flies, Krishna begins not with strategy, but with truth. This is the opening of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most sacred texts in Hinduism, and one of the most softly revolutionary teachings on karma ever spoken. Arjuna pleads to walk away. Krishna does not shame him. He invites him inward, not to escape action, but to understand it. He tells Arjuna, you have the right to work, but never to its fruits. This is the heart of karma yoga, the path of selfless action, not acting for gain, not avoiding action out of fear, but acting because it is one's role, one's dharma, and then releasing the outcome to act without attachment. This does not mean to be cold. It means to be clear, because karma, in the Gita, is not just about results. It is not about what the world gives back, or how others respond. Karma is the echo that forms at the moment of intention. It is the inner charge behind each deed. A kind action done for praise still carries attachment. A painful truth spoken gently, without ego, may still be pure. Arjuna listens, and so do many, not just in temples or monasteries, but anywhere duty meets uncertainty. The Gita speaks in the quiet between choices. In the silence before action, it says, do what is yours to do, but release your grip on what comes next. For Krishna, the soul, or Atman, is eternal, unborn, undying. It moves through bodies, through lifetimes, through seasons of being. What is real cannot be harmed. What changes is the outer shape. This is why detachment is not neglect. It is alignment, to live with integrity, without being pulled by craving or resistance. To do the work that is placed in your hands, but not be owned by it. This teaching becomes especially gentle when viewed not as commandment, but as comfort, because so many suffer not from action itself, but from the grasping that follows, wanting to control how one is seen, how efforts are received, what blooms from what's been planted. But the Gita reminds, you sow the seed, you water it, you care for the earth, but the flowering, that is not yours to demand. This applies to all actions, not just great deeds, but daily ones. A kindness extended without waiting to be thanked, a task done well, even when no one sees. A truth spoken because it is time, not because it will be understood. Each moment becomes sacred, not because of reward, but because of presence. This is the shift the Gita calls for, to stop living transactorily, doing in order to get, and start living from the center of one's being, anchored, aware, but unattached. Even success can become a chain if it defines your sense of worth. Even failure can become fuel for ego if clung to as identity. Krishna offers Arjuna another path. Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. The word yoga here does not mean physical posture. It means union, a joining of self with truth. And karma yoga is this union through action, not withdrawal, not passivity, but full engagement, followed by full release. This is what Krishna models, not just with words, but with his very presence. He is divine, yet he serves. He drives the chariot. He teaches without force. His power lies not in control, but in clarity. And Arjuna, in time, hears it. His hands steady, his heart quiets, not because the situation has changed, but because he has. He understands now. To step away from battle out of fear is also an action, also karma. Doing nothing can be just as binding as doing too much. What matters is awareness, and so, he acts. The battle still comes. But for Arjuna, it is no longer about victory or loss. It is about alignment with Dharma, the path of rightness, unique to each soul. This is the lesson the Gita gives to all who listen, that peace does not always mean stillness. That sometimes, the gentlest act is one of doing, without the noise of ego, without the weight of outcome. This way of being requires deep presence. It asks you to observe your own motives, to move without gripping, to let go not of care, but of control. And slowly, this becomes freedom. Not the freedom of escape, but the freedom of no longer needing to cling. Like a tree releasing leaves in fall. Like breath returning to silence. The Gita does not promise that life will become easy. It promises that meaning is found in how you meet it, with steadiness, with truth, with open hands. You begin to sense this steadiness now, not in the absence of motion, but in the center of it, like the eye of a storm, like a charioteer, waiting quietly beside you. Jainism and the weightless path of ahimsa. The stone is warm under bare feet. The road is quiet, not just from silence, but from intention. Every step is measured, every breath observed. Ahead, a line of white-robed monks moves slowly, with brooms sweeping gently before each footfall. They do not walk to reach a place, they walk to practice release. This is the Jain, monastic path, a way of moving through the world without harming it, not just in violence, but in thought, in word, in the invisible trail that action leaves behind. To follow this path is to embrace ahimsa, non-harming, not as a concept, but as a way of being. In Jainism, karma is not metaphor, it is material, a fine, subtle substance invisible to the eye, but real to the soul. It clings, like dust in the wind, to every moment of greed, anger, pride, or attachment. It thickens the self. It pulls the soul downward, into birth after birth. To be free is not to dominate life, but to grow so light that no more karma sticks. This is the goal of the Jain path. Moksha, liberation through weightlessness. It is a religion of restraint, but not repression, of discipline, but also gentleness. Jains do not seek to escape the world through force. They seek to purify their presence within it. The monk's broom is not symbolic. It is a tool, brushing away insects, clearing paths of unseen life, not from fear, but from respect. In Jain thought, every soul is sacred, not only human, not only animal, but plant, air, water, earth. Even a single-celled being carries jiva, the spark of awareness. To harm another is to harm oneself, because every violent act, even small, leaves a residue. It binds the soul more tightly to the cycle of death and rebirth. It reinforces illusion, the false idea that one life matters more than another. This is why Jain monks wear masks, not for themselves, but for the microbes in the air. It is why they fast, not to punish the body, but to quiet its demands. Each choice is made with awareness, shaped by the desire to move through existence with the lightest possible touch. For householders, Jains, who are not monks or nuns, the path is gentler, but still shaped by ahimsa. Many become vegetarians, some avoid root vegetables, so the plant need not be killed at its source. Others refuse to eat after sunset, so no insect is harmed in the dark. These practices are not commandments imposed from above. They are extensions of a single insight, that life is interconnected, and karma is not erased through belief alone. It must be lived out, moment by moment, through care. Jain scriptures describe karma in specific terms, with categories, layers, and types. There is karma that limits knowledge, karma that affects energy, karma that binds the soul to place, to time, to identity. Each is subtle, each is sticky, and each can be shed, not through worship or prayer, but through purification of intention. This is where Jainism diverges from many other spiritual paths. The gods may exist, but they do not save. There is no creator, no divine judge, only souls, infinite, eternal, each responsible for its own ascent. Even the Tirthankaras, the great, liberated teachers, do not intervene. They show the way by having walked it, but they do not carry others. They shine by example, not by favor. The 24th and final Tirthankara of this era was Mahavira. Born around the 6th century BCE, he renounced everything: wealth, family, clothing, even language, for long periods of time. He stood for hours in meditation. He fasted. He endured hardship without resistance, not because suffering is holy, but because detachment is. His goal was clarity, the complete disentangling of the soul from all karmic weight, and when he achieved it, he became Siddha, a soul risen beyond rebirth, still, quiet, free, for the Jain seeker. This freedom is not distant or abstract. It is immediate. Every small act of care, every kind thought, every moment of restraint, becomes a step upward. The path is not fast, but it is steady, and for those who follow it with devotion, the reward is not given, but revealed, the soul uncovered beneath layers of karmic dust, shining with its own inherent light. You imagine now the way it might feel to live without friction, to move through the world without leaving harm behind, to speak only when words bring peace, to eat, to walk, to breathe, in harmony with all life around you. This is not passivity. It is a kind of sacred precision, a commitment to reduce harm, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Jainism does not offer forgiveness in the traditional sense, but it does offer cleansing, through humility, through silence, through careful, compassionate living. In the end, liberation is not a gift from above. It is a lightness earned, step by step, breath by breath, until nothing more clings, and the soul, once heavy with motion, simply rises. Persia's moral flame, Zoroastrian echoes of choice. The fire does not flicker by accident. It moves with meaning, steady, quiet, and alive. In the Zoroastrian temples of ancient Persia, flames are not symbols. They are presence, carried, tended, protected, fed with clean wood, guarded by silence. This is Atar, the sacred fire, and through it, the unseen becomes visible. Zoroastrianism begins not in myth, but in choice, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, sometime between 1500 and Milbisa. This ancient faith speaks not of gods at war, but of the soul's role in cosmic order. Its central teaching is not obedience, but discernment. There is no karma by name, but the principle breathes just beneath the surface, alive in the way action shapes destiny, in the weight of every thought, word, and deed. In Zoroastrianism, every human being stands between two forces: Asha, the path of truth, order, and rightness; Droj, the path of falsehood, chaos, and deception. These are not just moral labels. They are realities that extend into the structure of the world. Asha is aligned with the movement of stars, with honest labor, with clean fire and flowing water. It is the way of things when they are as they should be. Droj is disorder, the slow decay of rightness, not always violent, but always distorting. 2 chooses to create, not only your life, but your afterlife, not only your fate, but the fate of the world. This idea that morality is not imposed but shaped is at the core of Zoroastrian thought. It is Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, who sets the order in motion. He does not demand submission, but invites alignment. His adversary is not his equal, but his opposite, Angra, Minu, the spirit of destruction and deceit. Between them, the soul stands free, and this freedom is not a passive gift. It is a burden, a sacred weight to think clearly, to speak kindly, to act rightly. These are not virtues for reputation or reward. They are tools, ways to cleanse the path forward, both for oneself and for the world. Every good deed is a flame added to the light. Every falsehood, a shadow cast across it. Zoroaster spoke of a final judgment, but not one dictated by whim. Rather, he taught that the soul weighs itself. After death, a person's spirit lingers for 3 days, near the body. Then comes the crossing, the Chinvate Bridge, thin as a blade, suspended between the worlds. For those who lived in truth, the bridge widens. It becomes safe, even beautiful. The soul walks across with ease, into a place of light, fragrance, and rest. For those who lived in deceit, the bridge narrows. It tilts, and they fall, not into fire, but into a realm shaped by their own distortions, cold, dark, and isolating. This is not eternal punishment. In most Zoroastrian teachings even, the wicked are not condemned forever. In the end, all souls are refined, all evil is undone. The world is restored, and time itself begins anew. But until then, choice is the sacred fire, flickering, steady, always present. You begin to feel how moral clarity in this faith is not harsh. It is luminous. There is no need for threat, because the path is always visible. There is no list of forbidden acts to memorize. Instead, there is a question that lives in the heart of every moment. Does this bring order or disorder? Truth or distortion? Warmth or cold? Zoroastrianism does not deny suffering, but it frames it within purpose. The world is a battleground, not of armies, but of intentions. And every soul is a soldier, not by aggression, but by presence, by how one works, how one speaks, how one treats animals, how one tends the fire in their home or temple. In ancient Persia, this flame was everything. It was kept clean, never touched by decay. Priests known as athrivans tended it in silence, ensuring no impure substance entered the sacred hearth. Even today, in places where the faith endures, the fire is still alive, burning in the quiet sanctuaries of Yazd, Navsari, or Mumbai. The flame never dies. It is passed, not relit, because its continuity matters. Like character, like memory, the Zoroastrian ethical code is often summarized in 3 parts: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Simple, but not soft, because these are not surface qualities. They are the architecture of one's spiritual life. A false word, in this view, is not harmless. It bends the path. It clouds the mirror of the soul. It makes the bridge narrow. And yet, there is gentleness here. The faith emphasizes community, charity, and care for the earth. Rituals are quiet. Offerings are clean. Bodies after death are not buried or burned, but placed in towers of silence. Round stone structures open to sky and sun. This is not neglect, it is humility, returning the body to nature without polluting the sacred elements of fire, water, or earth. Even in death, the balance of order is respected. You imagine now the stillness of a desert hill, a white-robed priest, a flame protected from wind, a prayer whispered not to beg, but to align. This is how the moral flame endures, not by force, but by the quiet discipline of those who remember. In a world where many traditions emphasize salvation from outside, Zoroastrianism invites the seeker inward, toward awareness, toward clarity, toward responsibility. To build one's life like a well-tended fire, not too bright, not too wild, but steady enough to light the path of others, and you begin to wonder, in the silence that follows, how many moments you've shaped, without knowing how many choices were bridges. How many quiet thoughts left a trace. The fire keeps burning. Egypt's feather and the heart's gentle weighing. The Nile flows without urgency, not rushed, not restless. It moves like time remembered. Along its quiet banks, life unfolds not in years, but in rhythms. The planting, the flooding, the harvest. And beneath it all, something deeper, a sense that life continues, even after the breath is gone. Ancient Egypt was not obsessed with death. It was devoted to continuity. The tombs, the prayers, the golden masks, these were not signs of fear, but of preparation. A careful unfolding of what came next, because for the Egyptians, death was not an end. It was a crossing, and what lay beyond was not punishment or paradise in the simple sense, but a scale, a test not of belief, but of weight, not of obedience, but of balance. This was the judgment of the dead, and at its center stood a feather, the feather of Ma. And Ma'at was not just a goddess, she was the principle of order, harmony, and truth. She governed the stars, the seasons, the moral structure of the world. To live in accordance with Mat was to live in rightness, not perfection, but alignment. When a person died, their soul, the Ba, began a journey. It entered the Duat, the shadowy realm between life and afterlife. There, with guidance from spells, amulets, and sacred names, it approached the Hall of Two Truths. Here, the weighing took place. The heart believed to record every thought and action was placed on a scale. On the other side, Mat's feather, light, delicate, unchanging. If the heart balanced the feather, the soul passed. It entered the field of reeds, a gentle, green land, where one could live again, farm again, be reunited with loved ones. It was not a heavenly palace, but a reflection of earthly joys, purified of pain. But if the heart was heavy with lies, cruelty, or imbalance, the scale tipped, and then came Ammit, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. She waited beneath the scale, not to torment, not to imprison, but to consume, to end. The soul did not suffer eternally, it simply ceased. In this system, there is no devil, no eternal fire, no distant divine anger. There is only weight and balance. Karma is not spoken here, but it is felt. Every act leaves a trace. Every word becomes part of the soul's composition. A life out of balance leads to a heart that cannot float. A life aligned with Mat, even if humble, leaves the soul light enough to rise. The Book of the Dead, more accurately called the Book of Coming Forth by Day, was not a book in the modern sense. It was a collection of spells, prayers, illustrations meant to guide the soul through the Duat. Some were commissioned in grand detail, others, simpler, but all pointed toward the same goal, not to escape judgment, but to prepare for it, to live a life that, when measured, would not need defense. Still, the soul was given a voice, in the ritual known as the negative confession. It stood before 42 divine judges, and declared what it had not done. I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not caused pain without reason, I have not polluted the river, I have not closed my ears to truth. The list is long, but its tone is calm, not fearful, almost meditative, a reflection of a life hoped to be clean. Not flawless, but balanced. You begin to sense the beauty of this belief. No hierarchy of sin, no theology of fear, only a question: how heavy is your heart? And the answer lives not in belief, but in being, in whether you gave bread to the hungry, in whether you were honest when it was hard, in whether you kept the scales of life steady, not tipping them for gain, not ignoring when others did. The ancient Egyptians built monuments to memory, not to escape judgment, but to face it with preparation. They surrounded tombs with scenes of the afterlife, not as fantasy, but as instruction. Osiris on his throne, Anubis guiding the scale, Thoth recording the result, Horus extending a hand. It was not spectacle, it was structure, and beneath it all, the steady presence of Mat. Her feather appears everywhere, atop her head. In the hands of priests, above doorways, beside names, a reminder that truth is not a sword, but a measure, not an accusation, but a balance. This idea reaches into daily life. In courts, Mat was evoked for justice. In architecture, for symmetry. Even the Nile's flooding was seen as an expression of her balance. Too much, and it destroyed. Too little, and it starved. But in harmony, it gave life, and so too, with the soul. The goal was not to be sinless, but to be sincere. To live with such alignment that, in death, the heart did not argue. It simply floated. You imagine now the hall of two truths, the silence before the scale moves, the breathless moment when all that mattered was whether the soul had lived in harmony. No anger, no plea, just the weight. And you begin to wonder how many things you carry that are not yours. How often the heart grows heavy, not from wrongdoing, but from neglect, or silence, or forgetting what matters. The Nile keeps flowing. The feather never changes, but the heart is always becoming. China's web of harmony, Confucian and Taoist threads. The rivers of ancient China do not rush, they curve. They listen to the land before choosing where to flow. Here, philosophy grows, not in opposition, but in reflection. One thought bending softly around another, like two branches reaching the same light from different angles. Confucianism and Taoism rise from the same soil, but they offer different ways to walk through life. Both are old, older than most religions. They do not offer heaven in the Western sense. They do not threaten punishment in fire or promise paradise in gold. But they understand cause. They observe pattern. They know that action returns. In Confucian thought, there is no God handing out justice. There is Li, ritual, propriety, the structure of relationships. There is Ren, human-heartedness, the soft strength of moral virtue. A person does not chase reward or fear judgment. They strive to be upright, because uprightness supports the whole. Family is central. Ancestors are honored. Order begins not from law, but from respect. A son honors his father. A ruler honors his people. A student honors the wisdom of the past, and in doing so, the world holds shape. Disharmony, selfishness, cruelty, arrogance, tears at that shape. It weakens the bridge between generations. It confuses the moral compass passed from teacher to child, from elder to youth. The return is not punishment, it is loss. A society with no respect collapses inward. A soul with no anchor drifts in. The Analects Confucius is quiet about the afterlife. He is asked what happens after death, and replies, "You do not yet understand life. How can you understand death?" And yet, the ethics he teaches ripple far beyond one lifetime. Live with honor, and the path behind you strengthens. Act with integrity, and your name carries light. Even in death, that light continues. Your descendants remember. Your village remembers. The harmony you held echoes. Not karma by name, but cause in return. Then, the river bends. Taoism flows in from another current. Softer, more yielding, less concerned with structure, more attuned to flow. Where Confucius builds, the Tao deconstructs. It asks, what happens when you let go? The Tao Te Ching, often attributed to Laozi, is not a set of rules. It is a guide to alignment, not with society, but with the Tao, the way. The Tao is not a god. It cannot be named. It is the pattern beneath all patterns, the rhythm of the seasons, the shape of water, the nature of time, and the wise person does not force their will upon the world. They observe. They yield. They do without doing. This is Wu Wei, effortless action. The reed that bends survives the storm. The mountain that resists is worn down by wind. To live well is to live gently in step with the Tao, not against it. When something disturbs the harmony, the Tao does not strike back. It rebalances, the ripple spreads, and slowly returns. If you harm, the harm returns. If you push, the resistance grows. But if you move in tune with others, with time, with truth, life softens. There is no divine ledger, no moral scoring, only movement, and its return. In Taoist thought, death is not a punishment. It is a continuation, a shift in form. A cloud becomes rain, a wave becomes the sea, a person becomes something else, and so fear of death fades, attachment softens. Life is lived more presently, not because of fear, but because of alignment. Confucianism teaches how to stand. Taoism teaches how to flow. One says, uphold your role, and you uphold the world. The other says, release your role, and you become the world. And in early Chinese life, both are practiced side by side, not as contradiction, but as complement. A man may honor his ancestors with Confucian formality, then walk into the mountains and listen to the wind, like a Taoist hermit. He may raise his children with order, then sit beneath the moon and let his mind drift. Harmony, in this world, is not just moral, it is natural, and moral harmony must reflect natural rhythm, not rigid, not blind, but responsive. Even in governance, these ideas shape rule. A Confucian ruler leads with virtue. He sets the example, and his people follow. A Taoist ruler governs by retreating. He creates space for the people to align with their own nature. Both believe in moral return, not through divine judgment, but through balance. A corrupt ruler loses the mandate of heaven. A selfish official falls to public shame. A person out of alignment with virtue suffers disconnection, even if unseen. The phrase mandate of heaven does not imply a God's wrath. It implies harmony. Withdrawn, the heavens do not punish. They simply stop supporting. And so, harmony is both the goal and the safeguard. You begin to feel it, gently. This quiet interweaving action creates return. Not because someone watches, but because everything touches everything else. Like threads across water, you drop a stone, and the ripples begin. Confucius teaches how to place the stone with care. Laozi teaches how not to drop it at all, and both understand that the ripples will reach you again. Greece and the invisible thread of Moira. In the cool dusk of ancient Greece, justice does not shout. It whispers through story. It moves slowly, like a shadow returning to its source. Here, karma is not named, but it is present, wrapped in another language, another shape, an invisible symmetry, a rhythm of return. The Greeks do not imagine a moral universe governed by fixed reward and punishment, but they do believe in Moira fate, allotment, the thread that holds each life in place. Moira is not vengeance. It is not mercy. It is what is. 3 figures guard the thread: Clotho, who spins the beginning; Lachesis, who measures the path; Atropos, who cuts the end. Together, they are called the Moirai. They do not answer to Zeus. Not even the gods can twist what they weave. A man's thread may stretch long, or it may fray early. It may climb with glory, or fall through ruin. But always, it carries what he has shaped with his own choices. In Greek tragedy, this thread is tested. Hubris, pride beyond the limits of man, calls forth the correction. Not because a god chooses to punish, but because the order of things cannot hold in balance. Think of Oedipus, who flees his prophecy, only to walk straight into it. Think of Agamemnon, who returns home crowned with victory, only to fall to the justice of blood he spilled. Fate in Greece is not cruel, it is precise. It echoes the shape of what came before. And so, the Greeks tell stories, not to threaten, not to promise, but to show what happens when harmony is broken, and how it returns. Their gods to reflect this strange morality. They are powerful, but not perfect. They rage, deceive, protect, betray, often moved by their own whims, and yet, even they are not above Moira. Zeus may delay a destiny, but he cannot erase it. The thread holds this tension between divine will and inevitable return becomes the stage for Greek drama. Humans act, the gods react, and fate completes the shape. Karma here is not immediate, but it is remembered. Curses stretch through generations. Oaths carry consequence beyond. A single life in the Orestia, the house of Atreus, suffers through cycles of revenge. One murder answered by another, until finally, the gods introduce trial and reason, a new kind of justice, softer than blood. But the memory remains. What is done does not disappear. The Greeks know this. They carve it into stone. They sing it into theater. To forget your place is to invite the fall. Not because someone watches from above, but because the fabric cannot hold imbalance. The word dike justice means more than law. It means alignment, a restoring of the natural order. If a ruler governs with cruelty, the people suffer, and the land withers. If a man dishonors a guest, the gods look away. But if one honors the xenia, the sacred code of hospitality, if one offers what is due, even to a stranger, then harmony flows. Peace holds that, this quiet order, never named karma, mirrors it, not as doctrine, but as experience. And in the mystery schools, places like Eleusis, the Greeks explore deeper rhythms still. They follow the myth of Persephone, her descent into Hades, her return each spring, a cycle, a lesson. Death is not the end. Nothing truly ends. Even the underworld, ruled by Hades, is not a place of fire or torment. It is a space of memory, of judgment, of rest. The soul carries what it lived. It remembers the weight of its choices. The dead are not tortured. They are sorted, not by punishment, but by resonance. Ordinary souls drift through shadow, but those who lived with honor may enter the Elysian fields, a soft and sunlit afterlife. And those who defied all moral balance, the worst tyrants, betrayers, violators of sacred law, they fall to Tartarus, a deep and hidden place, not because someone seeks revenge, but because the thread finds its balance again. This is the shape of return, the ancient Greek sense of spiritual cause. It is not transactional, it is not fast, but it is inescapable. A soul, a city, a bloodline, each carries what has been done, and the universe answers slowly. You begin to sense it. The moral weight beneath these myths, the stillness behind the stories, not rules, not threats, only reflection, a thread spun, measured, and finally, cut. But even then, it remains, somewhere. The echo continues, the pattern returns. Reflections from many shores, a tapestry of belief, across the great arc of time and distance. Belief drifts like wind over water. It shifts, it takes new shapes, but its undercurrent often hums with the same gentle law. Not a law written by kings, not one enforced by heaven, but something quieter, something felt, from the temples of Varanasi to the stone scrolls of Persepolis, from Egypt's sacred balance to the Greek thread of fate. Each place names it differently, but the rhythm remains. The idea that what is done echoes, that the weight of an action does not disappear into the dust. It lingers, it circles, and in time, it returns. In India, it is karma, action and consequence braided across lifetimes. A soul born again, not to be punished, but to complete what was left unresolved, to learn what was once misunderstood. In Persia, the soul stands at the bridge of the separator. Its deeds, light or heavy, shape what it sees. If one walked the path of Asha, of truth, the bridge opens to paradise. But if one turned from it, the soul descends, not by force, but by reflection. In Egypt, Matt holds the scale, not to strike fear, but to remind that order, cosmic and personal, must be kept in balance. And in Greece, Moira weaves the thread. No moral judgment, only return. What is sown must grow. What grows must be harvested. You begin to see it. These systems, scattered across continents, shaped by different tongues, speak to something beyond culture. They speak to a truth the soul already knows. That harm leaves a mark. That kindness leaves a lightness in the chest. That no choice disappears, even when it's forgotten. There is no need for an outside witness. The act itself carries its own echo. But in Tibet, karma walks hand in hand with intention, not just what is done, but why. If the seed is planted with compassion, the fruit will carry sweetness. If it is planted in pride, the roots may tangle. In the bardo, the in-between, the soul meets what it has become, not judged, but mirrored. And all throughout these beliefs, you begin to feel a shared softness. These aren't systems of punishment. They are systems of return, not vengeance, not reward, only continuation. The soul, in every version, is not finished in one breath. It returns. It travels. It learns. Like a drop of water finding its way back to the ocean, drawn not by force, but by gravity. In each culture, karma, or what feels like it, takes a different tone. Sometimes it is divine law. Sometimes it is natural order. Sometimes it is woven into the land itself, like the seasons, like the tides. But always, it suggests a relationship between self and other, between past and future, between choice and becoming. And that relationship is tender. It holds space for repair, for cycles to complete, for stories to change. You begin to wonder, not in fear, but in stillness. What thread are you weaving? What seeds have you planted, knowingly or not? Because these beliefs, scattered like stars across history, all point inward. They don't demand obedience. They invite reflection. They trust that the soul knows how to listen, knows when something is unfinished, knows when it's time to return and begin again. Across these ancient shores, karma is not a cage. It is a rhythm, a pulse that waits not to punish, but to balance. And when that balance comes, it feels like breath returning to the body. Soft, natural, unforced. No doctrine needs to explain it. No prophet needs to declare it. You feel it in your own life, in the weight of a lie left unspoken, in the quiet healing after a truth is told. This is the shared language beneath all the names, not judgment, only return, and somewhere inside that return, a chance to begin again. Still the same soul, just more awake. What gently comes back? A nighttime contemplation. The light has dimmed now. Not all at once, but slowly, like breath easing into stillness. The candle burns lower. Its flicker plays across the room with less urgency. The stories have been spoken, the teachings named, but what lingers is quieter than any scripture. You're left not with rules, but with rhythm. Not commandments to carry, but a sense deep and quiet that something watches, not to judge, but to balance. What have you offered today? What words did you shape with patience or with haste? What gesture, small or unseen, moved through you? And what silence followed behind? These are not questions of guilt. They're not weighed on a scale, not written in a book. They live only in the stillness you now rest in. The ancients, across lands and centuries, never fully agreed on what happens next. Paradise, rebirth, darkness, light, but on one truth, they quietly aligned, that all things move in circles. What is sent forward returns. What is ignored waits. What is broken finds a way to be touched again. Not out of punishment, not to even the score, but because nothing ever ends abruptly. Everything unfolds, everything completes. You imagine the day you just lived, not as a list, but as a shape. What was its curve, its texture? Were there moments where you paused, when you didn't need to, or rushed, when you could have stayed. You start to sense how even the smallest choice carries forward, how even silence has weight. Not heavy, not sharp, just echoing. The great teachers often said little about reward. They didn't describe karma as treasure waiting in the sky. They spoke more of alignment, of the way peace rests easier, in a body that doesn't resist its own truth. To walk a circle with grace means to meet the return without flinching. If a word comes back to you, you greet it. If a lesson repeats, you listen, not because you failed, but because you're being invited to see again. This rhythm does not chase you. It waits. Some days it arrives in joy, a gesture returned, a kindness echoed. Other days it hums in discomfort, a thread you thought forgotten, tugging quietly. But even then, there is no anger in it, only rhythm, only return, like tides reshaping the shore, like seasons redrawing the same hills in different light. And you are not outside of this. You are a part of it. Your breath, your words, your hesitations, they ripple outward and then come back. This is not meant to make you fearful. It's meant to soften you, to remind you that the circle is never trying to trap you. It's offering you a chance to become more whole each time it turns. The teachings may differ. Some name gods, some name laws, some name none at all. But underneath, there is always this gentle pattern. As you move through the world, so too does the world move through you. And what gently comes back is not a sentence. It is an invitation to notice, to adjust, to try again. The fire now is only a glow. The flame itself flickers low, but in the darkness around it, you see clearer. You are not asked to be perfect, only present to know that your actions are not lost in the air, but received somewhere, by someone, by something, and offered back to you when you're ready. Even your regrets, they are not punishments waiting in the shadows. They are teachers in slow disguise. And even the beauty you forgot to appreciate today, the smile you missed, the stillness you rushed past, they too may return. Nothing, it seems, is truly gone. Only moving, only circling. This is not a doctrine. It is a rhythm. One that needs no altar, no prayer, no promise, only awareness, only softness. You are not outside of its grace. You are walking in it, even now. And when the candle finally goes out, when the day fully releases its shape, what stays with you is not fear, but the quiet sense that everything finds its way home. Even you, even this, even now. The echo of the Norse word and the web of fate. Beneath the long winters of the north, where night lingers and silence stretches, there is a word that carries the weight of eternity. The Norse called it word. It is not fate in the sense of something imposed from above. It is not a sentence handed down, nor a punishment in disguise. Instead, it is a weaving, a quiet pattern unfolding, thread by thread, as each choice, each action, and each moment leaves its trace. At the heart of this vision stand the Norns, 3 figures, older than gods, sitting at the roots of the world. Tree Yggdrasil. They draw water from the sacred well of Erd, and they weave. One spins the thread of what has been. One measures what unfolds. One cuts when the time arrives. Their names are not merely names. They are time itself. What has been, what is becoming, and what must come. To the Norse, life is not a line, but a strand in their hands. Imagine the tree, itself Yggdrasil, vast and living, its branches stretching into heavens, and its roots reaching into shadow. At its base, the Norns work in silence, their loom unseen but eternal. They do not command, they do not decree. They only shape what is already sown. Every word spoken, every oath broken, every act of generosity or cruelty flows into their weaving. What you plant in the soil of time is what grows, whether as fruit or thorn. In this way, word is not unlike what other traditions call karma, but here it is colder, sharper. It does not wait for judgment. It does not require forgiveness or punishment. It is the natural consequence of being. The return is woven into the act itself. To slay unjustly plants violence in the fabric of your life. To stand bravely plants honor that echoes after death. There is no escape, only the recognition that everything done enters the web and cannot be unmade. The sagas of the North breathe this truth. Warriors walk into battle knowing their end is already part of the weave. The outcome does not frighten them, because courage is its own thread. To meet death with honor is to leave behind a pattern that others will see, a memory that strengthens the fabric of the people. Even the gods themselves are bound. Odin, Allfather, cannot untangle what the Norns have spun. He travels far for wisdom, sacrifices greatly for vision, but what he sees is the same truth. The threads move as they must. Consider how this shapes the way life was lived. In the North, where storms and hunger were constant, the acceptance of word created a deep steadiness. It taught that nothing comes without cause, and nothing fades without leaving trace. The web remembers. If one betrayed kin, that act would ripple. If one kept faith, the trust would return in kind. It was less a system of laws, and more a recognition of the living texture of reality. The people saw themselves as part of this web. They were not separate from earth, or gods, or spirits. Every oath, every battle, every harvest was part of a wider design. And yet, within that web, choice still mattered. The Norns wove, but men and women still moved. A strand could bend, could tighten, could lead to honor or ruin. The inevitability of death was fixed, but the quality of the life leading there was not. There is something haunting in this vision. To imagine your life as a single thread, pulled from the well and spun into being. To know it will be measured, that its length is already held in unseen hands. But also to see that the thread does not end with you. It joins others, crosses them, binds to them. A deed of kindness can become a bridge between strands. A betrayal can create a knot that tangles through generations. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost on quiet moments. You may feel this truth in your own life. A choice once made returns years later, echoing back in ways unseen at the time. A word spoken carelessly shapes an entire bond. A moment of courage becomes a memory that others carry long after. These are not accidents. They are the echoes of word, rippling through the web. The Norse saw this most clearly in story. Heroes like Sigurd or Brynhild are not merely individuals, but threads whose patterns reveal the larger weave. Their triumphs and tragedies are reminders that every action reverberates. The gods themselves await Ragnarok, the great unmaking of the world, not as something to prevent but as something already set within the loom. Even they walk toward their destined end with eyes open, and so word is both stern and consoling. It warns that nothing done is without weight, yet it comforts by showing that life is not random. There is form, even in loss. There is shape, even in struggle. Every winter endured, every death faced, every love held and broken, is part of the web beneath Yggdrasil. You are neither outside of it, nor forgotten by it. You can imagine now the loom, endless, unseen. You can almost hear the quiet pull of thread, the soft cut of scissors when time is ready. The web shimmers with every act, reflecting lives joined across centuries. It holds warriors and wanderers, gods and mortals, and it holds you. The Norse did not see word as a burden, but as truth. To know you are woven into something greater is to walk with steadiness. To live with honor is to leave a pattern that strengthens those who come after. Even when life feels fractured, the web remembers. Even when choices seem small, they bind to the whole. And somewhere, at the root of the great tree, the Norns keep weaving. They do not look back. They do not pause. They weave, as they always have, as they always will. The sound of their work is not loud, yet it is everywhere. Perhaps, if you grow still enough, You feel it too, the faint pull of your own thread, part of a tapestry without end. It is not always visible, yet it is always there, drawing quietly through the days of your life. The Norse believed that even the smallest moments, a word spoken over a hearth, the keeping of a promise, the raising of a cup in honor of a guest, were not lost to time. They became threads, fine but enduring, woven into the greater web. This sense of word shaped their view of community. Bonds of kinship and loyalty were not casual ties, but strands that held lives together. When one person broke faith, the ripple did not stop with them. The web trembled outward. Families, clans, and even generations could carry the weight of that single thread. The same was true of courage and generosity. To act with honor was to send strength outward, reinforcing the weave for all. In this way, the Norse saw their world as shared, every action part of a pattern larger than the self. It is here that word differs from fate, as we usually imagine it. Fate implies immovable destiny, an end written long before the beginning. Word, instead, is alive. It bends with the weight of deeds. It grows with each choice, and though the end of the thread is inevitable, the path it takes is not. A man could not escape death, but he could shape how he arrived there, whether with shame clinging to his name, or with honor echoing through song. The skalds, the poets of the North, carried this truth in their verses. When they told of warriors who stood firm, or kings who betrayed their word, they were not simply recounting stories. They were reminding listeners of the weave. The words gave form to memory. To speak of courage was to keep that thread alive, shining in the web. To speak of betrayal was to mark the knot that still weighed upon it. Storytelling, in this way, was a form of weaving, ensuring that word remained visible across time. Archaeologists find traces of this worldview even in burial mounds and ritual offerings. The care placed in honoring the dead, the weapons laid beside warriors, the ships set aflame on the sea, each was not only respect but recognition that the thread continued. Death was not an end, but a crossing into another part of the weave, where ancestors and gods awaited. Even the placement of graves within landscapes spoke to this vision, aligning lives with the larger web of earth, water, and sky. And above all, Yggdrasil stood as the living image of this truth, a tree vast beyond measure, holding 9 worlds in its branches and roots. It carried the weight of existence. At its base, the Norns drew water from the well to keep the tree alive, sprinkling its roots so that life could continue. The image is striking. Even the world tree depends on what is poured into it, just as word depends on the acts sown into its weave. What is given returns, always, whether as strength or as rot. In this light, word becomes not only inevitability, but responsibility. Each person, no matter how small, had a role in shaping the fabric of being. The gods themselves could not escape this law. They too awaited their fated hour at Ragnarok, where the web would draw tight and the threads would burn. Yet they did not despair. They prepared. They lived as though their deeds still mattered, because even in destruction, meaning remained. There is a quiet strength in this vision. To live with word is to live knowing that nothing you do disappears. Every kindness, every cruelty, every word and silence echoes forward. The loom does not forget, and when you think of your own life, this truth may stir softly in you as well. How many choices once thought small have shaped everything since? How many words linger, for better or worse, in the memory of another? The Norse would say, this is word, not punishment, not reward, but the simple return of what has been woven. And so, beneath the roots of the tree, the Norns continue their work. They do not pause, they do not tire. They draw from the well, and they weave. Threads cross and twist, tighten and break. Whole lives are pulled into the loom, and still the pattern grows. You do not see it in full, and you never will. But it is there, holding everything together. The dreaming Australia's songlines of return, across the vast red earth of Australia, Beneath skies that hold both burning sun and endless stars, there is a story that never ends. The Aboriginal peoples call it the dreaming. It is not a dream in the way one forgets upon waking. It is the deep law of existence itself, the sacred memory of how the world came to be, and how it must continue to be lived. In the dreaming, ancestral beings moved across the land in a time beyond ordinary time. They walked, they sang, they fought, they loved, and in doing so, they gave shape to everything. Rivers followed their journeys, mountains rose where their bodies lay, waterholes were born from their steps, and the songs they carried linger still, in the wind. To the people, these are not distant myths. They are the continuing presence of creation, visible in every stone, every tree, every breath of desert air. The dreaming is not confined to the past. It is here, always. To live is to walk within it, to honor the ancestors by maintaining balance with the land they left behind. Every action carries weight, not as punishment, but as relationship. If one gives respect, the land responds with life, water, food, shelter, belonging. If one takes too much, or acts without reverence, the silence answers. Crops may fail, animals may disappear, the land itself may seem to close its hand. At the heart of this truth are the song lines. These are paths across the continent, carved by the movements of ancestral beings. Each line holds a song, a rhythm that maps the land as it was first shaped. To follow a song line is to walk in the steps of creation itself. The verses tell when to turn, where to find water, how to travel through country. But more than that, they carry memory. To sing them is to keep the world alive, to give voice to the land so that it does not fall silent. The songs are law, and they are map, and they are prayer. Through them, each community knows its responsibility to care for certain stretches of country. The land is not owned in the Western sense. It is held in trust, guarded through ceremony, kept healthy for those who come after. A person belongs to the land as much as the land belongs to them. This reciprocity is the heart of dreaming, a balance that must never be broken. Consider how this vision shapes life. A simple act, such as gathering food, carries ritual meaning. To take without asking, without care, is to ignore the thread between human and earth. But to take while honoring the ancestors, to give thanks, to leave enough behind, is to feed, not only the body, but the spirit of the land itself. The return is immediate and quiet. Abundance continues. The land remains generous. The people remain in harmony. The dreaming also carries lessons of consequence. Many stories tell of figures who took more than they were given, who acted with pride or greed, and who were transformed. Some became stone, some became trees, some became the very animals they wronged. These transformations are not simply punishments. They are reminders that nothing disappears. Every action remains, woven into the country itself. To walk across the desert is to walk across memory, to see in the shape of a hill or the curve of a river the echo of what once was. In this way, the dreaming holds a vision of karma unlike any other. It is not an external force, not a distant reckoning. It is immediate, lived, inscribed in earth and sky. The world itself remembers, and it responds. What is done to the land is done to the self. What is offered to the land is offered back in return. Ceremony keeps this balance alive. Through dance, song, and story, the ancestors are honored, and the land is renewed. Fires are lit, bodies are painted, and voices rise into the night, carrying words that are thousands of years old. In these moments, the past and present are not separate. The dreaming flows through both, reminding those gathered that they walk in a continuity far older than memory. The silence of the outback holds this truth with a weight that cannot be spoken. To stand in that vastness, where red earth meets blue horizon, is to feel the presence of something unbroken. The land is alive with story, and the story is alive with land. Each rock and waterhole is both map and mirror. Each bird call is both sound and teaching. Nothing stands outside of the web, and so, to live within the dreaming is to live in constant awareness. Every step taken, every song remembered, every gesture toward or against the land echoes. The balance may be fragile, but it is also enduring. The ancestors still breathe through country, watching, listening, reminding. You can imagine walking along one of these ancient songlines. The ground warm beneath your feet, the rhythm of the song guiding your pace. Each note is not only direction, but connection to the people before you, to the land beneath you, to the unseen presence of the dreaming itself. In that walk, you feel both small and infinite, a single life carried along in a story without end. The dreaming is not only history, it is law, it is map, it is presence. It teaches that the world remembers every act, and that balance is the true path of survival. Across the red earth of Australia, this truth endures. Give respect, and the land will cradle you. Take too much, and the silence will answer. And in the stillness of that silence, you may hear it too, the faint hum of a song that began before time, and will continue long after. Carrying the story forward on the breath of the earth, the dreaming is not only myth, it is law. In Aboriginal traditions, there is no sharp division between the sacred and the ordinary. The story of how a hill was raised, or why a river bends, is at once a religious truth, a social guide, and a map for survival. The tale is not decoration, it carries instruction. How to move through the land, how to share water, how to remember the bonds between kin and country. The songlines serve as both scripture and compass. A man may walk hundreds of kilometers guided only by the words of a song, tracing the journey of a creator spirit. Each verse is a landmark, each note a reminder. If sung correctly, the song is more reliable than any map drawn on paper. For maps fade, paper burns, but a melody carried in the chest, repeated through generations, endures. To outsiders, this memory might seem fragile, vulnerable to forgetting. Yet within these cultures, the system is strong. Ceremonies renew it, elders test it. Young initiates are taught not only the words, but the responsibilities that come with them. To carry a songline is to inherit both direction and duty. In this way, the dreaming functions as a kind of living archive. It does not store facts in ink or stone, but in performance, in presence, in relationship. To know the land, one must sing it, must walk it, must listen. This is how the balance is kept alive. Karma, within this vision, is not an abstract ledger. It is immediate. If you overhunt, the scarcity teaches you. If you pollute a waterhole, the sickness spreads through your kin. If you neglect ceremony, the silence grows, and with it, the unease of imbalance. Reciprocity is not enforced by punishment. From above it is written into the very fabric of life, and so, in the dreaming, there is a rhythm between people and place. The land cares for those who care for it. It withholds from those who do not. This is not metaphor, it is reality. Aboriginal people feel this exchange as directly as one feels thirst or hunger. You imagine walking across that ochre soil. Each step leaves no mark, yet the land remembers. The warmth of the air presses on your skin. Somewhere, far off, a bird calls. The sound becomes a point in the songline, an echo older than you, older than memory itself. The elders say that time is layered here. The past is not behind. The ancestors walk beside. The dreaming is both then and now. It continues as long as the stories are sung, as long as the ceremonies are kept. This is why silence is feared. Not the natural quiet of desert nights, but the silence of forgetting. For if a songline is broken, a piece of the world unravels. With it, the trail grows dim. The bond between human and country loosens. To Aboriginal people, this is not just cultural loss, it is cosmic imbalance. Imagine this sense of responsibility. To remember is not only for yourself, but for the survival of land and kin. To sing is to nourish. To walk a path is to renew. Life becomes a continuous offering to ancestors, to country, to those who come after. Even death is folded into this cycle. When a person passes, their spirit travels back along the songlines, returning to the place of origin. Their essence rejoins the dreaming, becoming once more part of the eternal chorus that holds land and people together. Nothing ends, everything returns, and in this way, the dreaming is less a story and more a system, a law of reciprocity, a geography of memory, a cosmology lived with every breath. The red earth waits. The songs wait. Balance, always, waits. Native American circles, the sacred hoop, the fire burns low. Sparks lift into the dark air, carrying whispers into the sky. Around the flames, stories are told. These are not stories meant for entertainment, but for alignment. In the traditions of many Native American nations, truth is drawn in a circle. Life does not travel in straight lines, ending in silence. It bends, it returns, it comes back to itself. Among the Lakota, this truth is spoken of as the sacred hoop. It is not a symbol that belongs to one tribe alone. Variations of the circle appear across many nations, from the Cherokee to the Ojibwe, from the plains to the forests. Always, it points to the same wisdom, that life moves in cycles, that balance rests in the harmony of all things. The circle teaches that no being stands alone. People, land, animals, spirits, all are joined. To harm one strand of the web is to send ripples across the whole. To heal one strand is to strengthen the rest. Karma here is not some distant law, handed down by unseen gods. It is kinship. What is done to others will return, because you are part of them, and they are part of you. In Lakota tradition, the sacred hoop is sometimes spoken of as the circle of life. Every stage has its place. Birth enters from the east, where the sun rises. Youth belongs to the south, full of growth and energy. Adulthood rests in the west, with its weight of responsibility and harvest. Old age belongs to the north, where wisdom is gathered, and breath grows slow. Finally, death does not break the circle, it bends it back into birth again. This is the rhythm of existence, repeated endlessly, like the seasons turning. Ceremony reinforces this truth. In the sun dance, dancers move around a central pole, circling again and again. Their steps embody the cosmic wheel, their endurance a prayer for renewal. In the sweat lodge, the stones are heated and placed in the center, glowing red, round as the earth. Water is poured, steam rises, and the participants sit in a circle, praying together. Everything returns to this form. You imagine sitting there, in that darkness, the heat pressing close, the songs rising like breath from the earth. Each word is rhythm, each beat of the drum is heartbeat, and the circle becomes more than shape. It becomes experience. You feel yourself not as one, but as part of all. For the Cherokee too, the circle holds power. In their medicine wheel, the four directions are honored. Each has its color, its element, its teaching. East is red, the dawn, the eagle, the promise of new beginnings. South is white, the warmth, the deer, the openness of youth. West is black, the setting sun, the bear, the trials that strengthen spirit. North is blue, the cold, the winds, the wisdom of ancestors. Walking the circle means walking with respect for each turning. And in every telling, the circle reminds that life is relationship. No deed ends where it is made. The food you take is tied to the soil. The soil is tied to the rain. The rain is tied to the sky. The sky is tied to the prayers lifted in smoke. To forget this web is to stumble. To honor it is to walk in balance. Balance is the measure. A hunter takes only what can be used, thanking the spirit of the animal, offering tobacco or prayer. If he takes more, if greed clouds the moment, the balance is disturbed. The herds thin, the people suffer, the circle tightens. It answers. In this way, karma is not distant judgment. It is immediate. It is felt in the body of the land, in the rhythm of the seasons, in the harmony or disharmony of the people. A kind act strengthens the hoop, weaving trust and gratitude into its strands. A cruel act weakens it, and the weakening spreads, returning one day to the one who caused it. The circle also guides community. Councils gather not in rows, but in rings, so that every voice may be heard. The circle holds equality. No head, no end, no place of privilege. To sit in the circle is to remember that wisdom is shared, that truth may come from any direction. You begin to sense the beauty of this order, the fire at the center, the people around it, the stars above, circling the pole star, the seasons turning endlessly, the breath entering and leaving, again and again, all things moving, all things returning. Even grief is understood through the circle. A life lost does not vanish, it shifts. The spirit crosses into another part of the wheel, joining the ancestors, awaiting return. Death is not the breaking of the bond, but its reshaping. Those left behind grieve, but they also honor, knowing that the circle continues, that nothing is lost forever. In some traditions, vision quests reveal this truth. A young person goes alone into the wilderness, fasting, praying, waiting for a sign. In the stillness, they may see a vision, an animal, a light, a message. Always, it is placed within the circle. Always, it connects the seeker to the whole. The lesson is never for the self alone. It is for the community. It is for the web. The sacred hoop, then, is both map and mirror. It shows the structure of life, but it also reflects the state of the one who looks. When balance is kept, the circle is strong, shining, whole. When greed, violence, or neglect intrude, the circle weakens. The people feel it. The land feels it, and so begins the work of repair, of ceremony, of prayer, of right action, and perhaps you begin to see how gentle and how weighty this vision is. Every step matters, every word, every silence, every offering. Nothing falls outside the circle. Nothing escapes return. The fire burns low. The embers glow. Around them, the circle remains, unbroken, endless, waiting for the next step. The Mayan balance of worlds. The jungle is never still. Even at night, it breathes insects hum, branches sway, unseen animals whisper through the undergrowth. Within this living world, the ancient Maya built their cities of stone, raising temples that pierced through the green canopy, stairways rising toward the sky. These were not only monuments of power, they were instruments of time, built in harmony with the great cycles of the universe. The Maya believed that life itself was woven into rhythms, far greater than any individual. Human deeds were not separate from the cosmos. They were threads that tied the mortal to the divine. To live without balance, without offering, without respect, was to pull at the fabric of existence itself. In the sacred book, known as the Popol Vuh, the story begins not once, but many times. Creation is not a single act, but a series of attempts, each shaping the balance of the world. The first beings were formed from mud, fragile and shapeless, crumbling into nothing. The next were carved from wood, stiff and hollow, without soul or gratitude. These wooden people multiplied, but they did not honor their makers. They forgot the sacred rhythm, and so the gods destroyed them. The flood rose, the animals they had mistreated turned upon them, and their houses collapsed. Only later, after many dawns and dusks, were humans shaped from maize, the sacred corn, the very food of life. Flesh was made from ground kernels, blood from the red juice of the plant. At last, balance was found. Here we see how the Maya understood karma, not as a law of punishment, but as the rhythm of reciprocity. Creation was fragile unless gratitude and respect were woven into it. When people turned from the gods, From the balance, the cycle turned again, and the world was remade. Every dawn was a renewal of this covenant. The rising sun was not taken for granted. It was earned, sustained by ritual and offering. Priests climbed the temple steps with incense and prayer, their chants echoing against stone. Blood, the essence of life, was offered back to the divine, not as cruelty, but as reciprocity, a return of what had been given. To give was to maintain the cosmic turning. To withhold was to invite imbalance, and with it, destruction. The Maya did not fear the end of the world in the way later cultures would. They understood endings as part of the turning, woven into the great calendar of existence. Their long count calendar mapped not only years, but eons, great cycles called baktins, each containing thousands of years. When one cycle closed, another would open, just as night gives way to dawn. Even destruction was not final, but a doorway into renewal. In this vision, karma was not linear. It was cyclical, like the path of the sun, like the growth and harvest of maize. Deeds did not vanish, they circled back. An offering today sustained tomorrow, and neglect today returned as famine, drought, or discord. To live rightly was to step in rhythm with the turning of the great wheel. The temples themselves were part of this cosmic balance. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid of Kukulkan rises in perfect geometry. At the equinox, sunlight strikes its stairway, casting the shadow of a serpent descending, the feathered god returning to earth. This was no accident of architecture. It was a reminder carved in stone that human time must align with cosmic time, that harmony is maintained not only in ritual, but in the very design of the world. The people lived by calendars, not of days alone, but of sacred cycles. The Tizokan, the 260-day ritual calendar, guided when ceremonies should be held, when to plant, when to harvest, when to marry, when to begin war. Each day carried a sign, an energy, a resonance. To act without regard for the calendar was to move out of balance, to break rhythm. To act in harmony with it was to ensure blessing. Imagine a farmer kneeling in his field, planting maize by the count of sacred days. He does not see himself as laboring alone. Each seed is an offering. Each row is a prayer. The rains, the soil, the growth, all are bound in reciprocity. To harvest is to receive. To offer thanks is to sustain. This is the Mayan rhythm, life, as exchange, as balance, as cycle. Even in their myths of the underworld, this truth is echoed. In the Popol Vuh, the hero twins, Hunab and Zabalank, descend into Xibalba, the realm of death. They face trials, games of chance, and suffering. Yet through wit and courage, they overcome the lords of the underworld. But their victory is not destruction, it is balance. They rise again, becoming the sun and the moon, day and night, the eternal alternation that sustains the world. Their story teaches that even death is not an ending, but part of the rhythm, part of the turning dot to the Maya. Therefore, karma was not a distant decree, but a living cycle. It was the balance between maize and rain, between human and divine, between life and death. When offerings were given, when rituals were kept, when gratitude was lived, the world flourished. When they were forgotten, imbalance grew, and the cycle turned toward collapse. Yet collapse itself was not final. The Maya saw history as layered with worlds before ours, each created, each destroyed, each giving way to the next. Our own age is but one thread in this vast weaving. What we do within it matters, because it sustains the cycle for as long as it may turn. So when you stand before the ruins, the broken temples covered in vines, you may feel sadness at what has been lost. But for the Maya, loss was never absolute. Time itself is alive. What has fallen returns. What has gone waits in silence, ready to rise again when the cycle turns. The jungle breathes, the stones remain, and the calendar of the cosmos continues to turn, endless as the stars above. Ritual, for the Maya, was not a performance for gods who were distant. It was an active participation in the very machinery of the universe. Each prayer, each cut of incense, each drop of blood was a thread woven back into the fabric that held everything together. Among the most sacred offerings was the gift of life itself. Bloodletting rituals were performed by kings and queens, not peasants alone. A ruler would pierce his tongue or his skin with obsidian blades, letting drops of blood fall onto paper, then burning it so that smoke carried the essence heavenward. This was not seen as pain, but as necessity, a reminder that authority itself was bound to sacrifice, that leadership was only legitimate when it honored the cycle of reciprocity. In giving of their own bodies, rulers renewed the bond between the human and the divine. The ball game, too, was more than sport. Played upon great courts of stone, its movement echoed the dance of celestial bodies. Teams battled to keep a heavy rubber ball in motion, striking it with hips and shoulders, never hands. To win or lose could carry immense consequence. Sometimes, captives were sacrificed at the end, offered as blood to the gods, but this was not cruelty for its own sake. It was symbolic of cosmic struggle, of light against darkness, life against death. Each game was a miniature of the hero twins' descent into the underworld, a reminder that balance is maintained through trial, sacrifice, and renewal. Every layer of Mayan life reflected this principle. Houses were aligned to the sun, temples to the stars, cities to the sacred mountains and rivers. Even death itself was seen through the circle. When someone passed, they did not vanish. Their spirit traveled to Shabalba, the underworld, but the path was not eternal punishment. It was trial and transformation. Some souls rose again, reborn into the turning of time. Ancestors were honored, their bones kept close, their memory living as part of the household. The dead remained within the circle of the living. This worldview shaped not only myth, but survival. The Maya lived in lands prone to drought, to famine, to sudden change. They understood that imbalance in nature was mirrored by imbalance in society. A king who failed in ritual was blamed when rains did not come. A community that neglected offerings risked hunger and disease. To maintain harmony was not only spiritual, it was survival itself. And so, each act was a thread. To share food was to feed the circle. To offer thanks was to sustain balance. To neglect, to hoard, to forget. These were not only moral failings, but cosmic disruptions. What one did always came back, not as distant judgment, but as part of the turning of time. When we look back now, across centuries, we see stone cities reclaimed by jungle, palaces silent, temples overgrown, the great calendars left to weather. Many have called it collapse, a fall into ruin. But through Mayan eyes, it was another turning. Worlds rise, and worlds pass away. To them, nothing is truly lost, only transformed, awaiting the cycle's return. And so their wisdom whispers still, that all life is bound by rhythm, that balance must be kept, not by fear, but by gratitude, that what we do does not end with us, but flows outward, returning again, like the sun across the horizon, like the maize sprouting anew from the soil. This was the Mayan karma, not punishment, not reward, but reciprocity, rhythm, cycle, a balance of worlds, endlessly turning. The Aztec heart and the sun's return in the Valley of Mexico. Beneath high mountains and clear skies, the Aztec people built their cities on lakes and stone. Their empire rose where water reflected sky, and where the sun's path was measured, in ritual and blood. To them, life itself was borrowed. It was not given freely, nor was it owned by individuals. It belonged to the great cycle, to the sun, to the gods, to the balance that held the world together. The Aztecs believed that, in the beginning, gods themselves had sacrificed to set the sun in motion. Divine beings had cast themselves into the flames, so that light could rise over earth. Without that self-forwarding, there would be no dawn, no maze, no life, and so, humans owed a debt. Every heartbeat was a gift borrowed from the cosmos, and one day it had to be paid back. This was not cruelty in their eyes, but reciprocity, the law of balance, carried on through blood and breath. At the center of their capital, Tenochtitlan, the great temple rose like a mountain of stone. 2 shrines crowned its heights, one for Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, and the other for Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility. There, priests performed rituals to keep both fire and water in balance. For without sun, there was no harvest, and without rain, no life could grow. Sacrifice, often misunderstood, was their language with the cosmos. Prisoners of war were offered, not as victims of hatred, but as messengers. Their hearts, lifted still, beating toward the sky, were thought to carry the pulse of humanity back to the sun. Each drop of blood was a spark of divine energy returned. Without such offerings, the Aztecs believed the sun would weaken, and the world would fall into darkness. This was their vision of karma, not personal punishment or reward, but cosmic exchange. The sun had given itself for humanity. Now humanity gave itself for the sun. Each act of giving kept the circle turning, but sacrifice was not only of blood. Flowers, incense, food, and song were also offerings. Every Aztec household kept shrines, and each festival brought gifts to the gods. Children were taught from early days that generosity, ritual, and respect were part of maintaining harmony. Even the act of growing maize, the sacred corn, was a prayer. To plant a seed, to tend it, to harvest it, was to mirror the god's first sacrifice, where the body of a divine being became food for mankind. The Aztec calendar revealed this balance with extraordinary clarity. It was not simply a way to count days, but a map of destiny. Cycles of time turned endlessly, each day carrying sacred meaning, each year woven into the fabric of cosmic duty. To be born on a certain day meant to carry a specific energy, a role within the great balance. Life was not random, it was patterned, rhythmic, interconnected. Even death was not an ending, but a pathway determined by the life one had lived. Warriors who fell in battle, and women who died in childbirth, were honored as companions of the sun. They rose with him at dawn, accompanying his journey across the heavens. Farmers and common people entered different cycles, returning as hummingbirds, butterflies, or elements of the natural world. Every soul found its place, woven into the rhythm of the cosmos. In this way, the Aztec vision of karma was communal and cosmic. What one gave was returned, what one neglected would weaken the whole. A single act was not isolated, it rippled outward, feeding or draining the sun itself. When we gaze back now, at the ruins of Tenochtitlan buried beneath Mexico City, we see only stone foundations. Yet if we listen carefully, the heartbeat of that worldview still echoes. It reminds us of something simple yet profound, that life is not only ours to keep. It is borrowed, part of a vast exchange. The breath we take is given by the trees. The food we eat is born of the soil and the sun. Our existence, too, is a debt of gratitude. The Aztecs gave this truth a fierce, unforgettable form. Their offerings, their temples, their calendars were all shaped by a single principle, that the world lives because we give, and that giving returns as life renewed. Thus, their karma was not judgment, but exchange, a balance of heart and cosmos, a sun rising, because someone, somewhere, remembered to give back. And so, the circle turned. Each dawn, when the first rays of light broke across the horizon, the Aztecs believed they were witnessing not only the rise of the sun, but the triumph of a cosmic pact. The sun had not risen by chance. It rose because the people had remembered, because the offerings of the night had fed the dawn. Life, in this vision, was fragile, yet also enduring, because it rested on balance. Too much neglect, too much forgetting, and the order of the cosmos could collapse. But with devotion, with song, with sacrifice, the cycle endured, generation after generation, to the Aztecs. This was not superstition, but responsibility. Each man, woman, and child played a role in the maintenance of the world. A farmer tending his maize, a mother teaching her children prayers, a warrior walking toward battle, even a priest lifting incense into the air. Each was part of the same covenant. No one was outside it. No one lived only for themselves. And within this understanding, there was both weight and comfort. Weight, because every choice mattered. Comfort, because every life was part of something vast and eternal. Death itself, so feared in many cultures, was here woven into the very fabric of life. To give one's blood, one's breath, or even one's body was not the end, but a continuation, a transformation into the energy that sustained the universe. The heart, the very seed of life, was seen as the most precious offering. When lifted toward the heavens, it was not viewed as destruction, but as a bridge. The heart's rhythm became the sun's rhythm. The final beat of a human chest joined the eternal pulse of creation. And so, the circle turned not only in temples, but in fields, in homes, in the marketplace, in the singing of children, in the weaving of cloth, in the rhythm of drums, at festival time. Every action, great or small, was a gesture in the cosmic exchange. Even the stones of Tenochtitlan spoke of this worldview. The city itself was built as a reflection of the universe. Canals mirroring rivers, plazas aligned with the stars, temples rising like sacred mountains. To walk through its streets was to walk through a living cosmos. Each step reminding one of the greater balance, though centuries have passed, and the temples have crumbled into silence beneath the weight of conquest. In time, this vision remains. The Aztecs left more than ruins. They left a philosophy carved into the memory of the earth, that life is alone, that we are woven into a web of reciprocity, that giving sustains all things. In the quiet of modern days, when the sun rises over the same valley where Tenochtitlan once stood, the circle still turns. The trees still breathe out what we breathe in. The rivers still carry water that nourishes the fields. The stars still mark their courses across the night. And perhaps, if we listen, the lesson of the Aztecs whispers to us still, that our lives are not separate, not self-contained, but bound in a sacred exchange. What we take, we must give. What we give, returns. The circle turns endlessly. And within it, every heart, every breath, is part of the sun's return. Celtic ripples the Druids' hidden law. Amid the mist and oak groves of the ancient Celts, there was no single scripture to follow, no stone-carved doctrine to bind generations. Instead, wisdom lived in breath and memory, carried from elder to apprentice, from druid to seeker. It was never written down, but spoken beneath trees, by rivers, in the silence of sacred groves. This wisdom was called imbas, the deep knowing, a kind of luminous insight. To touch it was to feel the pulse of harmony that bound the seen and the unseen. For the Celts, the world was not a possession, nor a stage for mankind alone. It was a living weave, made of forests, rivers, stones, and stars, each holding a spirit, each deserving reverence. To act against that harmony, to pollute, to destroy, to take without honoring, was to invite its echo. For in their understanding, nature always remembered. The river that was poisoned would one day rise and flood. The forest that was cut without gratitude would return as silence and famine. This was the Druids' hidden law, the law of return. What you sent into the world carried back to you. Unlike later philosophies of karma that measured deeds in moral scales, the Celtic vision was elemental, rooted in the land itself. If you disturbed the natural order, you disturbed yourself. If you honored it, life honored you in return. Their myths carry this rhythm. The stories of warriors who broke oaths only to fall by betrayal. Kings who ruled with arrogance only to see their kingdoms wither, but also tales of poets and seers, whose words healed and inspired, returning as blessing upon their people. The law was never written, yet it was always present, woven into story after story. Ripple after ripple, the Druids, keepers of memory, were guardians of this balance. They taught through riddles and visions, urging their people to see the world, not as a collection of parts, but as a single flowing whole. To break one strand of the web was to tremble the entire pattern. Sacred groves were their temples, rivers, their sanctuaries. Stones carved with spirals and knots symbolized what words could not, the endless cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Each spiral told of return, of journeys outward that always curved back inward. Even their burial mounds and stone circles were not monuments to the past, but alignments with eternity. The sun rising at solstice, the moon at its turning, the stars at their ancient crossings, all reminders that human life was a ripple within a greater tide. In this vision, to live rightly was not to obey a commandment, but to move with the flow of the natural world. Generosity, hospitality, and truthfulness were prized, for they kept harmony alive. Greed, cruelty, or dishonor were feared, for they broke the flow and invited the river's flood. And so, in Celtic lands, karma was not an abstract judgment. It was the law of nature itself. The deer hunted without ceremony would vanish from the woods. The oath broken in pride would return as shame. But the seed planted with care would grow strong, and the kindness shown to a stranger would one day return at the threshold of one's own need. Today, the old groves are gone, many felled centuries ago, and the voices of the Druids are but echoes. Yet their law lingers, carried in fragments of myth, in the spirals carved on stones, in the quiet whisper of rivers and trees. Stand by a Celtic river, and you may sense it still. The current does not forget. Every action leaves its ripple. The world answers, softly, but unfailingly. The Druids did not call it karma, nor fate, nor punishment. They called it balance, the hidden law that holds the world together. And so, in mist and oak, in river and stone, their wisdom endures. What we send out, we meet again. What we disturb, we inherit. What we honor, returns as blessing. The law is hidden, but not lost. It waits quiet, like a ripple widening through time. For the Druids, to know this law was not to master it, but to live with humility before it. They saw that no one stood apart from nature's weave. Kings and farmers alike were bound to the same current. The oak that shaded the chieftain's hall was no less sacred than the stream that watered the shepherd's flock. Both carried spirit, both remembered. This sense of memory was at the heart of their world. Rivers were not only waters but witnesses. Forests were not merely trees, but libraries of breath and time. A word spoken in anger, a deed done in haste. These did not vanish. They lingered, like stones dropped in still water, spreading circles, farther than eyes could see. The Celts understood that these circles always came back, sometimes swiftly, like an oath betrayed and answered with betrayal. Sometimes slowly, across generations, when a clan's arrogance would wither its land, or its cruelty would return as famine. But whether near or far, the balance always found its way, and just as shadow returned to shadow, so did light return to light. A kindness offered to a traveler was remembered by the world. A song sung in praise of the river was carried in its current, blessing the fisherman and the field. To plant rightly, to share generously, to speak truth. These were not small gestures. They were seeds sown into eternity. The Druids called this Imbas Forestnai, the inspiration that illuminates. It was not simply poetry or prophecy, but a glimpse of the deep harmony beneath all things. Those who touched it saw how every act echoed, how every soul was threaded into the whole. To harm the world was to harm oneself. To honor the world was to be lifted by it. And so, their hidden Law was not enforced by kings or guarded by armies. It needed no prison, no decree. It lived in the turning of seasons, in the patience of stone, in the endless returning of tides. When we look back now, across centuries, at the standing stones and burial mounds, at the spirals cut into weathered rock, we see more than symbols. We see reminders that life flows in circles, that what we disturb will find us, and what we nurture will rise again at our door. The Celts gave this truth the shape of rivers and forests, of groves and spirals. They did not call it karma, but they knew its rhythm. It was the Druids' hidden law that the world remembers, and the balance always returns, and so the ripples widen still. Rome and the scales of Fortuna. In the marble glow of Rome, fate is never silent. The goddess Fortuna watches from her pedestal, blindfolded, holding the wheel that no hand can stop. To the Romans, she is not gentle, she is not cruel. She is motion itself, the shifting of fortune, the rise of emperors, the fall of tyrants. Her scales are not written in books, but in the very rhythm of the empire. They speak of fatum destiny, the course of things laid beyond human will. No man, not even Caesar crowned in laurel, stands free of it. And with fatum comes its shadow, nemesis, the correction that follows excess, arrogance, indulgence, hubris. These draw balance down like storm clouds. The Romans understood that fortune, once provoked, turns her wheel. No banquet, no triumph, no legion's strength could stand in her way. The empire itself becomes a stage for this belief. Victories are celebrated with splendor, yet always with fear. The generals who ride through Rome in triumph wear a crown of laurel, their chariot followed by voices whispering, "Memento mori," remember, you are mortal. The reminder is not cruelty, but balance. Even in glory, humility is demanded. To forget it is to summon Fortuna's turn. Consider the emperors whose names carry both brilliance and ruin. Julius Caesar, whose ambition bent the republic until it shattered. Nero, who sought the world's stage as singer and god, while fire consumed the city. Each believed themselves untouchable, yet each met the scales. The dagger in the Senate, the revolt of soldiers, the whisper of fate carried through corridors until the crown fell. But the law of balance did not weigh only upon rulers. Farmers prayed to Fortuna for harvest, merchants to her for fair trade, soldiers for survival. To live in Rome was to live in her shadow. The goddess had temples across the empire, from small shrines in villages to grand sanctuaries in the capital. In each, the same truth was offered. Fortune is borrowed, never owned. Romans placed coins upon altars, poured libations, offered statues. They asked not for endless luck, but for moderation, for balance. The wise knew that to grasp too tightly was to invite reversal. To give, to restrain, to walk with measure, these kept the scales steady. The great philosopher Seneca warned that prosperity without virtue was a trap. That unchecked desire always carried its correction. His words echo the same principles spoken in temples and forums alike. The world remembers. The stories of Rome carry this memory into drama and myth. Tragedies of poets told of kings, destroyed by arrogance, of men who mocked the gods and were undone. Fortuna does not act with vengeance, but with inevitability. To overstep is to fall. To forget the limits of power is to awaken correction. The wheel turns, not because she wills it, but because it must, even beyond myth. The rhythms of Roman law carried traces of this balance. Contracts bound citizens with obligations. Debt carried weight. Justice demanded repayment. The civic life mirrored the cosmic order. To take without giving was unsustainable. To cheat was to incur debt that sooner or later found its reckoning. The courts enforced what the gods had long whispered. And so, in the daily life of Rome, one sees an unspoken law. Not karma, as the East would frame it, but a law of balance recognized in marble and ritual. The farmer tending his field knew it. The general leading his legion feared it. The emperor on his throne felt it in the silence of night. Fortuna, they said, is fickle, but in truth, she is consistent. She lifts, then she lowers. She turns, and she returns. To ignore her is to build a house upon sand. To honor her is to accept the rise and fall as part of living. The empire that stretched across continents carried armies, aqueducts, laws, and language. Yet even this giant could not outrun the wheel. Rome itself rose, glittered, and in time, declined. A civilization that once seemed eternal came to feel the correction of excess, the weight of imbalance. The lesson it carried remains: no crown, no empire, no name is immune to the turning of scales. And perhaps that is why the image of Fortuna still lingers. A woman with her wheel, blindfolded, impartial. She does not punish, she remembers. She restores what is tipped, she humbles what grows proud. When you hear her name, you hear the echo of marble halls, the whispers of slaves and senators alike, all knowing the same truth, that every act, whether clothed in purple or bound in rags, finds its place upon her scales. Balance, even here, wears a crown of inevitability. Fortuna's wheel does not move only in palaces and battlefields. It turns also in the daily lives of merchants and farmers. A man sets out to sea with cargo, praying to Fortuna for calm waters. A woman tends her vineyard, whispering to the goddess that the rains may fall in balance. In each case, success is never fully claimed by skill alone. Romans know that no harvest, no journey, no fortune can be secured without her turning hand. Even soldiers, hardened by campaigns across distant lands, carry her symbols into war. Coins struck with her image pass through their hands, tokens of her favor, reminders that victory is as fragile as the flick of her wrist. When triumph arrives, they thank her. When defeat descends, they curse her. Yet they never forget that both belong to her domain. The Roman moralists often warn against hybris, the arrogance that blinds men to Fortuna's power. History tells of generals who marched too far, emperors who believed themselves untouchable, senators who mistook privilege for permanence. Their stories end the same way, with sudden reversals, fortunes collapsing, and power reduced to dust. The message is not revenge, but rhythm. The empire itself becomes a theater where balance insists on being kept. Yet Romans are not entirely without hope. Fortuna is not always cruel. She is also Fortuna Redux, the one who brings the traveler safely home. She is Fortuna Primigenia, the firstborn goddess who guards the beginnings of life. Shrines to her stand not only in Rome, but across the provinces, each community shaping her image to reflect the balance they seek. A mother lays offerings for her children's health, a soldier for his safe return, a statesman for the stability of the city. In this way, Fortuna reflects the Roman soul. She is capricious, but also intimate. She is feared, yet courted. She embodies the truth that no one commands their destiny alone, that every life rests upon a turning wheel larger than itself. And though she has no strict law of return, like later visions of karma, her presence teaches the same lesson. Deeds echo, arrogance falters, balance comes. You can almost imagine it, the wheel creaking in silence, slowly spinning, carrying lives, upward and then down, without pause, without end. Each life is a spoke, each empire a momentary rise. Even the eternal city is not beyond her hand. Marble cracks, power shifts, rulers fall, and still the wheel moves. For the Romans, to live under Fortuna was to accept uncertainty, but also to recognize that uncertainty is the true balance. The gift of fortune today is the reminder of loss tomorrow. The loss of tomorrow is the seed of fortune to come. And so their empire thrived for centuries, not only by sword and stone, but by a deep unspoken trust in rhythm, in a balance that No man could command, but all must honor. It is in that rhythm that the lesson lingers. Fortuna's wheel does not stop. It does not listen to prayers, nor does it ignore them. It turns because it must, and in its turning, it whispers the same truth the Romans once knew, that power, wealth, and even life itself are never owned. They are only lent, only held, only spun for a time, and when the wheel moves on, silence remains, not as punishment, but as the sound of balance returning. Africa's ancestral echoes, Ubuntu and balance, across the wide lands of Africa. Wisdom is not only found in texts or temples, but in the voices of elders, in the firelit gatherings of villages, in the quiet stories passed from one generation to the next. Here, the teaching of Ubuntu takes root. It is not a single word, nor only a philosophy. It is a way of being. It whispers, I am because we are. Ubuntu begins with belonging. To harm another is not only to wound them, but to fracture the bond that ties you to them. To give kindness is not only to help them, but to strengthen the thread that binds you both. In this way, every choice you make is mirrored back into your own life. The teaching is not abstract. It is lived in shared meals, in communal work, in the songs that rise when harvests are brought in together. Among many peoples, the ancestors walk close. They are not gone but present, unseen companions in the rhythm of daily life. A wrong committed is never hidden from them. A kindness offered is never forgotten. Offerings of food, drink, or song are made to keep their guidance near, for they are guardians of balance. They are not distant gods, but family who continue to hold the community in their care. Ubuntu is the reminder that your breath belongs, not only to you. A child is raised by more than parents. A traveler is welcomed as kin, for their safety strengthens the safety of all. Even strangers are folded into the circle, for one day, you too may be the stranger needing care. To live outside this balance is to invite emptiness, for the community sustains not just the body, but the soul. Elders often tell stories to teach this. A tale might speak of the hunter who kept his kill for himself, and later found hunger shadowing his family, or of the woman who shared her little grain with neighbors, and later found her fields multiplied with unexpected harvest. These stories are not punishment and reward, but reflections of a law deeper than law itself. What you give returns. What you withhold diminishes. The seed planted in another heart will bloom, whether as bitterness or as joy, within your own. In some traditions, wrongdoing is seen as a disturbance, not just between people, but in the whole order of being. A quarrel unsettles the village. A theft lingers in the air like dust. Balance must be restored, often through rituals of reconciliation. Families meet, gifts are exchanged, words of apology are spoken not only to the wronged, but to the community, to the ancestors, and to the land itself. Healing is collective, for damage ripples outward, touching more than the one who caused it. The rhythm of Ubuntu carries through music and ritual. Drums echo not as entertainment, but as heartbeat of the community, a pulse reminding all that their lives move together. Dance becomes prayer, weaving each person into a pattern larger than themselves. Even silence has meaning, for to sit in stillness with others is to acknowledge that your presence supports theirs. Unlike the karmic visions of other cultures, Ubuntu does not measure balance across lifetimes, but within this one, its justice is immediate, woven into the daily web of human ties. Yet in the presence of the ancestors, time itself feels layered. To respect them is to respect continuity, the truth that your actions today shape not only tomorrow, but the remembered path of those who come after you. You may picture the village circle, children gathered at the feet of elders, firelight flickering against carved faces, voices soft but steady. In those circles, the lesson is not shouted, not demanded, it is lived. Each child sees how generosity brings warmth, how arrogance brings isolation, how forgiveness restores peace. The teaching is not only told, it is shown, and so it lingers, stronger than law, deeper than fear. Even in modern Africa, where cities rise and roads stretch across ancient lands, Ubuntu continues to guide. Leaders invoke it in times of division. Communities revive it in times of need. It moves not only in ritual but in the daily gestures of help, in the recognition that survival is not solitary. Its wisdom stretches beyond borders, reminding that no human is whole in isolation, that every soul is shaped in relation. And so, Ubuntu becomes more than a cultural memory. It becomes a mirror. It asks you, quietly, if your being is tied to others, what are you planting in them? What echoes will you leave in their hearts, to be carried back into your own? The African teaching rests on this truth. Balance is not enforced from outside, but grows from within the circle of human connection. Each action shapes that circle. Each kindness strengthens it. Each harm weakens it. In the end, to harm another is to harm yourself, and to heal another is to heal yourself. It is here, in the ancestral echoes, that a gentle law hums through time. You exist because others exist, and they exist because of you. Every breath, every step, every offering is bound to this rhythm. To live apart from it is to wither. To live within it is to remain whole. And as the firelight fades and the circle grows quiet, only the heartbeat of this truth remains steady, simple, unbroken. Polynesia and the ocean of Mana, across the scattered islands of the Pacific, where the horizon is endless and the sea carries both food and fear. A single word holds the weight of existence. Mana. Mana is not just power, not only strength, it is presence. It is the unseen force that flows through chiefs and warriors, through the fish in the reef, through the birds that ride the wind, and through the stones that anchor the land itself. To live in Polynesia is to live inside this ocean of sacred energy. Every act, every word, every gesture increases or diminishes it. In Hawaii, mana is the foundation of rank and responsibility. A chief is not obeyed because he demands it, but because his mana is great, inherited from gods and ancestors. His body, his breath, even his shadow carries this force. To insult him is not merely disrespect, it is a wound to the very balance of life. In Samoa, mana moves through the motai, the titled heads of families. Their decisions, rituals, and speech either strengthen the collective harmony or weaken it. To speak without care, to take without giving, is to let mana drain away. To lead with generosity, to guard the family's honor, is to fill the household with sacred power. In Aotearoa, the Mbori see mana as both inherited and earned. A warrior who acts with courage increases it. An elder who speaks wisdom gathers it, but arrogance, greed, or betrayal corrodes it. Deeds live on, shaping not only an individual's mana, but the mana of their Aiwa, their tribe, for generations. This balance extends to the land and sea. To overfish is to wound the reef and diminish the mana of the people. To neglect ritual offerings before a voyage is to risk storms and empty nets. In the Polynesian world, karma is not a distant judgment. It is immediate, woven into the tides. And when you imagine standing on the shoreline at dawn? The ocean stretches before you, endless and alive. The salt air touches your skin. In that moment, you feel it. Mana is not an idea, but a current, moving through everything. To act with respect is to rise with the tide. To act with selfishness is to be pulled under. What you give returns upon the waves. What you withhold is taken by the sea. In this way, mana is memory, the ocean itself carrying forward the record of balance and imbalance. The canoe that sails far carries the mana of its builders. The chant that names the ancestors calls their strength into the present. The stone set upon the land anchors not just a home, but a history. And so, for the Polynesian mind, life is a voyage. Every stroke of the paddle is a choice. Each brings you closer to balance or further from it. Here, Karma is not punishment, not reward. It is flow. The measure is simple. Does your action give mana, or does it take it away? The ocean remembers, the ancestors watch, and the tides, forever turning, return what you have sent. Mana, like the sea, is never still. It rises, it falls, it shifts with the winds of choice. No person owns it forever. No family keeps it without care. It must be tended, guarded, nourished, like a flame in the night, or a canoe on the open ocean. This is why the Polynesian worldview is not of isolation, but of connection. The fisherman does not fish only for himself. His catch is measured against the health of the reef and the mouths of the village. The farmer does not plant only for his hunger. His work is bound to the land's mana, to whether the earth will give again when the next season comes. In chants and songs, the ancestors are remembered not for their wealth or conquests, but for how their mana endured. A warrior who fell in battle with courage lives on in story because his mana flowed into his people. A chief who ruled with wisdom is honored not for riches, but because his decisions fed harmony. What is remembered is not what was taken, but what was given. This current moves forward into descendants. A child inherits not only bloodline, but the mana of their forebears. If the lineage is strong, if its stories are sung, and its lands kept in balance, the child is lifted by that current. But if shame, greed, or disrespect weaken the line, the child feels the ebb and must strive to restore it. In this way, karma is generational. The deeds of one ripple across many, and yet, always, there is choice. A voyager on the open sea is free to steer. Even if storms come, even if the stars vanish, the paddle remains in their hand. To act with generosity restores mana, to seek reconciliation, to honor the gods, to give thanks. These acts rebuild what was lost. Nothing is beyond return, just as no tide fails to turn. You stand again upon the shore, listening. The surf rolls in and out. The sound is a lesson. The ocean gives, and the ocean takes, but always it returns. So too with mana, ebbing, flowing, carrying forward the truth of every deed. And so the Polynesian vision of balance is neither fear nor strict punishment, but rhythm. You are part of the sea, the sky, the lineage, the land. What you do sends ripples outward, and the ocean of mana carries them on. One day, they return, not as vengeance, not as reward, but as balance, as tide. Here, karma is not written in stone or sealed in text. It is sung on the wind, carried in canoes, guarded in tapu, shared in feasts, and remembered in silence beneath the stars. The sea is watching, the land is listening, the ancestors walk beside you, and in every gesture, whether in respect or in carelessness, you place your hand upon the current of mana, guiding it forward. Japan's subtle balance, on and giri. In the quiet landscapes of Japan, where mountains rise like guardians and cherry blossoms drift with the wind, the balance of life is not always spoken, but always felt. Here, karma is subtle, woven not in thunder or fire, but in the delicate threads of gratitude, obligation, and duty. Two words guide this unseen current, on and giri. On is the weight of gratitude, the acknowledgement of what has been given. It is the recognition that every life is shaped by the kindness, labor, and sacrifices of others. Parents who nurture, teachers who guide, ancestors who built, gods and spirits who bless the harvests and the rains. To live is to receive on. Giri is the response, the duty to act in return. It is obligation, not forced, but deeply felt, a sense that to receive without giving back is to disturb the balance of the world. Giri compels one to repay kindness with loyalty, hospitality with respect, generosity with reciprocity. Together, on and giri form a circle. Not unlike karma itself, gratitude flows into obligation, obligation flows into gratitude, and the pattern continues without end. In this vision, actions are not forgotten. A gift freely given plants a seed of awe within the heart of the receiver, who then carries the quiet weight of response. This may take the form of service, words of thanks, or years of loyalty. To neglect this return is to allow imbalance, a shadow upon the bond. An imbalance, in time, carries its own consequence. The Japanese spiritual landscape is shaped by both Shinto and Buddhism, and within each, karma flows in a distinct yet harmonious way. In Shinto, the ancient faith of nature, and kami, purity and harmony, are everything. Acts that disturb the balance, disrespecting a sacred place, breaking social trust, failing to honor ancestors are seen as spiritual stains. These stains ripple outward, affecting family, community, even the land itself. But just as stains can be made, they can be cleansed. Through rituals of purification, through sincere action and offering, balance can be restored. In Buddhism, introduced from the continent but shaped into uniquely Japanese forms, karma is seen as a law of cause and effect. Every thought, every deed carries weight into the future. But here, too, subtlety is key. The quiet gesture, the restrained word, the patience of silence, these cultivate harmony as surely as great acts of generosity. Disharmony, likewise, accumulates not only in grand offenses, but in the small frictions of selfishness and disregard. And so, karma in Japan is not a distant judgment, but a daily practice. It hums through the way one bows, the way one speaks, the way one shares tea or removes shoes before entering a home. Even in the smallest detail, balance is either upheld or disturbed. Consider the cherry blossom, delicate, fleeting, falling with the lightest breath of wind. Its beauty lies not in permanence, but in transience. Life is the same. Every moment is passing. Every chance to act will not return. Thus, to waste a moment in selfishness is to let petals scatter unremembered. To act with giri, to honor on, is to let blossoms fall with grace, each carrying meaning. This subtle law extends beyond human ties. Farmers bow to the soil before planting. Fishermen pray to the sea before casting nets. Craftsmen give thanks to their tools, believing spirit resides even in the objects that serve. To take without gratitude is to wound the unseen bond. To honor with care is to increase harmony. In Japanese stories, you find echoes of this truth. A fox spirit may reward kindness done to an injured creature. A neglected shrine may bring misfortune until repaired. Ancestors appear in dreams to bless or warn, their presence shaped by the deeds of the living. These tales are not superstition alone. They are mirrors of the on and giri that bind worlds visible and invisible. Imagine yourself in a quiet Japanese village centuries ago. The air is cool. The rice fields shimmer with water. You hear the soft ringing of a temple bell. Life here is woven in obligations, tending the fields for family, caring for the shrine, honoring the seasonal festivals. Each act is both duty and gratitude, for to neglect them would invite imbalance, but to uphold them brings a sense of peace, a subtle flow of rightness that needs no words. Even today, in modern Japan, these patterns endure. The exchange of gifts is careful, not for the object itself, but for the unspoken balance it sustains. A favor asked is a thread tied, a responsibility carried forward. In work, in family, in friendship, these unseen weights are never forgotten. Karma here does not crash like waves or roar like thunder. It falls gently, like blossoms upon the water, yet its force is no less binding. Over time, the petals gather, forming currents that guide the river of life. To live within this weave is to understand that nothing is isolated. Gratitude flows into duty, duty flows into gratitude, and every act sends ripples outward. Harmony preserved becomes harmony returned. Disharmony created becomes disharmony endured. The balance is delicate, yes, but it is also enduring, like the seasons that turn, like the blossoms that bloom and fall. The circle of on and giri continues, reminding each person that they walk not alone, but within the threads of all who give and all who receive. Here, karma is subtle law, the unseen, order that ensures nothing is lost, and everything, in time, returns. Korea's flow of in and hwa, on the Korean peninsula, where mountains rise like blue-green waves and rivers wind patiently toward the sea. Life has long been seen as a web of causes and harmony. Here, karma is not a distant doctrine but a rhythm, felt in daily life. It flows through the concepts of in, cause, and hwa, harmony. Together, they form a vision of existence in which every action leaves a trace, and every trace seeks balance. In the old language of thought, to act is to plant a seed. This is in. The seed matures in time, bearing its fruit, or gwa, good, or bad, gentle or harsh. No seed remains dormant forever. The fruit returns to the one who planted it, not as punishment or reward, but as the natural unfolding of causes into consequences. But beyond this cycle of cause and fruit, Korea holds another principle just as vital: harmony. To live well is to live in tune with self, with family, with community, with nature. This harmony is not only unpleasant, it is dangerous, for it disturbs the flow of life itself. This vision was shaped by many streams of thought. Buddhism, arriving from India through China, taught of karma as the endless unfolding of in and gwa, every thought and deed carried forward into future lives, weaving the chain of rebirth. But when these ideas settled in Korean soil, they mingled with the teachings of Confucianism, which placed great weight on family, respect, and proper order. Confucian households were built on balance, respect flowing downward from elders' care, flowing upward from children, loyalty binding ruler and subject, affection binding husband and wife. If each person upheld their role, hwa was preserved. If any link broke, a son disobedient, a ruler corrupt, a husband cruel, and balance spread outward like cracks in a vessel. Thus karma, in Korea, became deeply relational. It was not merely the sum of individual acts, but the weaving of choices into the shared fabric of family and society. To betray one's duty was not only a private failing, it weakened the whole. To act with integrity was to strengthen bonds beyond oneself. This emphasis on relational balance can still be seen in the Korean idea of jang, a deep, enduring affection that binds people together, built over time through care, sacrifice, and loyalty. Jang itself can be seen as fruit of countless acts of living harmony that sustains families and friendships across generations. Imagine a traditional village beneath the shadow of the mountains. In the courtyard of a Confucian home, 3 generations gather. The elders sit in places of honor, speaking with calm authority. The younger members bow in greeting, their movements carrying the weight of centuries of custom. To show respect is not only politeness, it is the honoring of in, a cause that will bear fruit in the harmony of the household. The children who bow today will one day receive bows in turn. The cycle continues, binding past, present, and future. Nature too was seen through this lens. To cut trees without restraint, to fish without offering prayer, to neglect ancestral graves, all were causes that disturbed, and the fruits would not delay. Storms, poor harvests, misfortune in the household. Balance required reverence. Mountains were sacred, rivers carried spirit, ancestors remained present. To honor them was to live in tune, even in stories and folklore. The lesson is clear. A man who mistreats his parents finds himself cursed by poverty. A woman who shows kindness to a wandering monk is later rescued by fortune. Spirits reward harmony, and they punish discord. The unseen world is not separate, but interwoven with the choices of the living. And in Buddhism's softer voice, the teaching carries further. In and Gua extend beyond a single lifetime. Every deed sows seeds, not only for today, but for lives yet to come. A child born into suffering carries the fruit of past causes. A soul blessed with wisdom has cultivated merit before, yet no fate is fixed. At every moment, new causes may be planted, new harmonies restored. For the Korean mind, this means life is never solitary. Every act touches others, weaving threads of harmony or discord. A kind word may ripple for years, softening hearts beyond one's knowing. A selfish act may echo through family lines, leaving scars that require generations to heal. Karma is thus relational memory, carried not only in the soul but in the bonds between people. To sit in stillness in a Korean temple is to feel this truth. The air smells of pine and incense. A monk chants softly, each syllable rising and falling. Like waves, behind the hall, mountains stand eternal, their slopes covered in mist. Here, you sense that existence is flow. In becomes gua. Discord becomes harmony, and all things return in their time. Even in modern Korea, echoes of these patterns remain, in the careful observance of family rites, in the deep respect for teachers and elders, in the enduring bonds of Jang that make communities resilient. Though lives are faster now, the sense endures that balance must be kept, that to take without giving, to disrespect without cause, is to sow seeds of discord that will, sooner or later, bear fruit. And so, karma here is not only law, but living memory. It is the unfolding of yin into gua, the weaving of harmony or disharmony into the great fabric of family, society, and nature. To live in Korea's vision is to know that no act vanishes, and no bond is without weight. To act with care is to plant causes of peace. To act with selfishness is to plant causes of discord. Either way, the fruit will come, and in the end, harmony is the measure. Does your life move in tune with the balance of all things? Or do your choices create dissonance that ripples outward? Here, karma is not thunder, nor flame. It is the quiet flow of seed into fruit, of discord into harmony, of cause into consequence. It is the way rivers find the sea, and how families find their place across generations. In Korea's vision, the lesson is gentle yet firm. Every seed matters, every bond matters, and in time, every act returns, not alone, but woven into the harmony of the whole. Jewish echoes measure for measure. Among the ancient voices of the Hebrew people, one principle repeats, with unshakable rhythm: midha kanijed, midha measure, for measure. It is one of the oldest Jewish ways of understanding how deeds return. It appears in the Torah, it resonates in the Talmud, and it threads through centuries of commentary, shaping a worldview in which actions do not disappear, but echo back with symmetry. This principle does not appear as wrath alone, nor as arbitrary judgment, but as a mirror held up to human life. To show kindness is to receive kindness. To cause harm is to taste harm, not by accident, but by design. A world shaped with divine justice, woven into its foundations. The root in torrent, the Hebrew scriptures. Measure for measure often arises in narrative itself. Pharaoh, who decreed that Israelite infants should be drowned in the Nile, meets his downfall when his armies are drowned in the sea. Jacob, who deceives his blind father by disguising himself, is later deceived when his sons use a goat's blood to trick him into believing Joseph is dead. These are not coincidences. The storytellers and sages saw them as the unfolding of divine symmetry, the world correcting itself through mirrored consequences. The Torah does not always explain this directly. Instead, it leaves the attentive reader to notice, as you do so, shall it be done to you. Even commandments reflect this vision. An eye for an eye, so often misunderstood as vengeance, was in rabbinic tradition read as measure for measure in justice, that restitution should match harm, never exceed it. It was about proportion, not cruelty, in the Talmudic mirror century. Later, the rabbis of the Talmud gave the principle sharper form. They wrote, "By the measure that a man metes out, so is it meted out to him." The saying recurs like a refrain, applied to countless scenarios. One who judges others harshly is judged harshly. One who shows mercy is met with mercy. This was not superstition, but theology. To the rabbis, the world itself was sustained by covenant, a relationship between God and Israel, between heaven and earth. Actions mattered because they participated in that covenant. The symmetry of Midah, Cain-aged Midah, was not random, but the reflection of a just God maintaining order. Even suffering could be seen through this lens. When misfortune struck, sages often searched for its mirror. What act, what neglect, might it reflect back? Yet alongside this came a crucial caution. Human beings cannot always read God's ways. Job's story remained a warning that not all suffering is comprehensible. Still, the pattern endured as a way to see life's consequences, as infused with meaning, not vengeance, but symmetry. It is important to pause here. To call this punishment is to miss its essence. In Jewish thought, Midah, Cain-aged Midah, is closer to balance, to correspondence. It is the universe singing back the notes we send into it. Cruelty echoes as cruelty, yes, but so too does compassion echo as compassion. A story in the Talmud tells of a woman who gave bread to the poor. When her own daughter later fell into poverty, others gave bread to her in turn. The act had returned, measure for measure, not as punishment, but as mercy. The mirror reflects both ways, covenant and responsibility. This principle also deepens the sense of covenantal responsibility. Israel is not a people abandoned to fate. They are in relationship with God. Their deeds matter not just personally, but collectively. When justice is neglected, the prophets cry out. Consequences fall not by chance, but as the covenant's echo. Let justice roll down like waters, Amos proclaims. Here, the return of measure for measure is not mechanical, but moral. Injustice, allowed to stand, will bring its own downfall, but kindness practiced faithfully will sustain. This covenantal view transforms karma from an impersonal law into dialogue. To act is to speak. To reap is to hear the response. God listens, the world listens, and the reply is in kind. Everyday reflections for Jewish communities. This principle entered daily life in subtle ways. In prayer, one asks for mercy because one is called to show mercy. In business, fairness is commanded because dishonesty returns upon the dishonest. In family, honor for parents is linked to the promise of long life. Even the smallest gesture carries weight. A harsh word might rebound in wounded relationships. A generous act might ripple into blessings unseen. Every deed is covenantal, woven into the dialogue between the human and the divine. Stories, as mirrors many rabbinic tales, are told almost as parables of measure for measure. One tells of a man who once mocked the poor for begging. Later, he himself was struck with illness, dependent on others' charity. The tale is not cruel, it is corrective. His arrogance was reflected back, not to destroy him, but to teach him the weight of his actions. Another tale speaks of a rabbi who visited prisoners and listened to their pleas. Later, when he himself was falsely accused, others remembered his compassion and secured his release. Here too, the mirror shines compassion, answered by compassion, beyond this world, like many spiritual traditions. Judaism also extends this principle beyond earthly life. The world to come, the sages taught, reveals the full measure of deeds. Some rewards are unseen here but await in eternity. Some consequences, likewise, belong to another realm. Yet the emphasis in Jewish life has remained strongly here and now. Torah and mitzvot are lived daily in this world. The symmetry of measure for measure is not distant. It is the fabric of the life one is weaving moment by moment. A mirror of God ultimately. Midah, Cain-aged Midah, is not only about human action, but about the divine image itself. Just as God is merciful, so too must human beings show mercy, for as you measure, it shall be measured to you. human action becomes reflection of God's own attributes. To practice compassion is to draw down divine compassion. To practice justice is to align with divine justice. In this sense, karma in the Jewish vision is not impersonal, but covenantal, relational, intimate. It is a mirror woven into the dialogue between people and God. The still echo imagined, then. A reader of Torah, sitting by candlelight, centuries ago, tracing the patterns of story. They notice the symmetry, the deceiver deceived, the oppressor overcome by his own decree, the kind rewarded with kindness. In this recognition, they see not accident, but the rhythm of a world held by justice. In that quiet space, the lesson becomes clear. Life is a mirror. What you send out, you will meet again. What you plant in the field of covenant, you will harvest in time. The echo is not cruel, nor empty. It is the echo of a just God, shaping the world in measure, calling humanity to responsibility, to compassion, to awareness. And so, in Jewish thought, karma is not a wheel nor a tide, but a covenantal mirror, mida kaniged, mida, measure for measure, holding every act, every choice, in a symmetry that reminds us, the way you give is the way you will receive, the way you harm is the way you will taste harm, the way you love is the way you will be loved. This is not vengeance, but justice, not randomness, but relationship. A law written not only into nature, but into the heart of covenant itself. Christianity's seed and harvest, across the fields of Christian scripture. One image returns again and again, the seed and the harvest. It is a rhythm older than farming, yet written into soil and soul alike. The Apostle Paul gave it its clearest voice. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. In those words lies a law, as ancient as the earth itself. Every act, every choice, is a seed, and no seed lies dormant forever. In time, it breaks open, takes root, and yields its harvest, whether of life or of ruin. Christ's parables of soil and season. Jesus himself taught through the imagery of planting. To him, the heart was soil, and deeds were seeds. In the parable of the sower, some seed fell by the wayside, some upon rocky ground, some among thorns, and some upon good soil. Only the good soil yielded fruit, 30, 60, even 100-fold. The lesson was not simply about farming, but about hearing and living the word of God, a generous act, a prayer in faith, a kindness to the poor. These were seeds that, though hidden for a time, would blossom into a harvest of life. The opposite was also true. In the parable of the weeds, Jesus warned of seeds sown by the enemy, deceit, greed, cruelty. These too grow in silence, until the harvest reveals what has truly taken root. Thus, the kingdom of God was pictured as a field, every heart a patch of soil, every act a planting. Paul's warning and promise, Paul's letter to the Galatians, made this principle stark. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he who sows to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap everlasting life. Here karma finds its kinship in Christian thought. Paul frames it in terms of flesh and spirit, selfish desire versus divine life. Every selfish deed plants corruption. Every faithful deed plants eternal life. The harvest is not punishment but consequence, not accident but divine order. Paul's words also carried a promise. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. Even when kindness seems unnoticed, even when mercy seems wasted, the seed is alive, waiting its season grace, and the field of God. Yet Christianity adds a unique note to this rhythm, the seed of grace. If sowing and reaping were the whole story, the field would be bleak, for all have sown weeds of sin. But the gospel speaks of a God who plants new seed, who offers forgiveness where only thorns once grew. Grace does not cancel the law of sowing and reaping, but it transforms the field. A heart once barren can be made fertile again. A past sown in ruin can be redeemed by mercy. The cross itself is pictured as a seed. Unless a grain of wheat fall into the earth and die, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Christ becomes the seed that falls, the harvest that rises, the grace that turns wasteland into garden. Everyday seeds in daily life. Christians came to see every choice through this image. A word of encouragement planted peace. A deed of generosity planted blessing. Neglect or bitterness planted thorns. The Epistle of James calls the tongue itself a tiny fire that sets a forest ablaze. Words spoken cannot be recalled. They too bear fruit. In contrast, James urges the planting of gentleness. The fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Thus the Christian life becomes an act of careful gardening, weeding out envy, watering forgiveness, pruning selfishness, planting love. Judgment as harvest. The harvest image also colors Christian visions of final judgment. In Revelation, the Son of Man is pictured with a sickle, reaping the earth. The harvest is not random, but true to the seed planted. Sheep and goats, wheat and weeds. The imagery repeats, declaring that the end is a revealing of what was sown. Yet even here, the theme is not vengeance, but revelation. Judgment uncovers what has been growing all along. The harvest does not lie. Stories of sowing and return the lives of the saints often illustrated this truth. A bishop who fed the hungry in secret later found himself miraculously provided for. When famine struck, his hidden sowing returned in kind. Conversely, stories are told of rulers who sowed cruelty and reaped rebellion. Their own hardness mirrored back upon them. These were not told as moral fables only, but as glimpses into the divine pattern. Seed and harvest, sowing and reaping, woven into the moral order of the world. The harvest of love, but the greatest seed, the New Testament insists, is love. Love never fails, Paul wrote to the Corinthians. Faith and hope endure, but love is the seed that blooms eternal. To forgive an enemy, to feed the stranger, to clothe the naked, these were seen as plantings, not only in earth, but in heaven itself. Jesus declared, "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me." Every act of love is planted in the soil of eternity, a field still growing even now. The metaphor continues to guide Christian imagination. In sermons, prayers, hymns, the field reappears. Every season of life is seen as a planting. Youth is spring, labor is summer, old age is autumn. Death itself is pictured as winter, not an ending, but the resting of the seed, awaiting resurrection's spring. In this view, the Christian path is not merely about rules or prohibitions, but about tending a garden that will one day reveal its harvest. The still rhythm to walk through a wheat field at dusk, to see the stalks bowing heavy with grain, is to feel this truth made visible. Every field is a sermon. What was planted has returned. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. So too, in the Christian heart. In the hidden soil of choice and faith, the law holds, "Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Yet it is not a law of despair, for in grace, the gardener walks among the rows, turning weeds to wheat, ashes to beauty, sin to redemption. Thus, karma's kin in Christian thought is not mere inevitability, but a seed sown in covenant and grace. The harvest is certain, but mercy may transform the soil. Every act is a seed, every seed has a season, and every season ends in a harvest of the soul. Sufism and the echo of the heart. Among the mystics, the Sufis, the language of balance takes a different shape. Where law speaks of judgment and measure, the mystic speaks of the heart, the hidden chamber where every deed is born. For them, karma is not only about weight and consequence, but about echo. What you release from your heart returns, carrying the fragrance or the wound of its origin. The great poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." This is not a denial of pain, but a revelation of its role. Harm done to others is harm engraved upon the self. Love offered is love received, not always in the same form, but in the secret unfolding of the soul's journey back to its source. For the Sufi, life is a mirror. To strike the mirror is to shatter your own reflection. To polish it with kindness, patience, or remembrance is to see the face of God shining more clearly. This is why so many of their teachings return to the image of the heart as a mirror, tarnished by selfishness, polished by love. In the gatherings of the whirling dervishes, this teaching becomes movement. With one hand turned upward to receive, and the other downward to give, they spin around the still point of the heart. Each turn says, what flows in must flow out, and what flows out will return. Karma here is not a ledger, but a dance, the circle repeating, refining, softening, until the soul awakens to the truth that giver and receiver are one. The Sufis often speak of ishqi, divine love, as the hidden current beneath every act. If your deed is rooted in love, its return will nourish. If it is rooted in greed or cruelty, its return will sting, not as punishment, but as medicine, guiding the heart back to alignment. For them, cause and effect are not blind mechanics, but threads in a vast weaving of mercy. Every story they tell reflects this truth. A tale is told of a man who insulted a beggar in the street, only to find years later that his own son was shamed in public. The Sufi master guiding him did not say, "You are punished," but rather, "The echo of your voice has come home. Do you hear it now? Do you understand what your heart once created?" In another tale, a poor woman gives her last piece of bread to a stranger. That night, in her dream, the prophet comes to her with light in his hands, saying, "What you gave in hunger has filled the heavens." In Sufi teaching, even intention carries its echo. To desire harm is to plant poison in your own soil. To wish good is to water your own roots. And so they train themselves not only in outer conduct, but in inner watchfulness, guarding the heart, polishing it with remembrance of God, so that what emerges from it may be worthy of return. Where the jurist might speak of justice, the Sufi whispers of love. Where the theologian speaks of reward and punishment, the mystic speaks of reunion. For them, karma is not only about keeping balance in this world, but about the soul's long journey back to the beloved. Each deed is a step, and the echo that returns is not meant to weigh us down, but to guide us home. Imagine standing in a quiet room with a single drum. You strike it once, and the sound fills the air. The walls answer. The air answers. Your own chest answers with its resonance. This, say the Sufis, is how life works. Every act is a drumbeat. Every drumbeat returns. If you play with harmony, the room becomes music. If you strike with anger, the room fills with noise that presses back against you. Rumi, in his poems, reminds us again and again, what you seek is seeking you. To seek love is to find love seeking you in return. To spread cruelty is to meet cruelty in unexpected places. The circle is unbroken, the echo unfailing, and yet, above all, the Sufi trusts in mercy. Just as a song can be retuned, just as a mirror can be polished, so too can the heart be transformed. Repentance, for them, is not fear but longing, the cry of the soul, aching to be reunited with its source. In that return, the echoes of past deeds are softened, absorbed into the greater ocean of divine compassion. Thus, the Sufi vision of karma is not heavy with dread, but alive with possibility. Every act is an opening. Every moment is a chance to turn. The echo that comes back is not final judgment, but a teacher. To wound is to learn how deep wounds can cut. To love is to learn how infinite love can be. In the end, for the mystic, karma is not law, but love, not scale, but song, not a record to fear, but a rhythm to join. You give, you receive. You wound, you are wounded. You love, you are loved, until the heart, refined through countless echoes, no longer sends out anything but light. And when that day comes, the Sufi says, the circle is complete. The heart beats only with the rhythm of God, and the echo that returns is not echo at all, but silence, the silence of union, where lover and beloved are one. The modern mind, science, energy, and return. In our own age, the ancient rhythm has not vanished. It has only changed its garments. What was once spoken of as karma, balance, or divine measure now appears in the language of science, ecology, and psychology. The return of deeds, the ripple of actions through unseen webs, remains as present as ever, but framed in equations, systems, and experiments. Physics offers one of the clearest mirrors. The law of conservation tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. A movement, a spark, a wave of heat does not vanish. It disperses, transforms, and finds another shape. Every action, no matter how small, persists in the unfolding of the universe. For the modern mind, karma is echoed here. Nothing is lost, only transfigured. The push of cause and the pull of effect are threads woven into the very structure of reality. Newton, centuries ago, placed this rhythm into simple words. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Push the world, and the world pushes back. Throw a stone into a pond, and the ripples must return to the shore. The idea is not spiritual but mechanical, yet in it lies the same truth ancient sages once whispered. Your actions never vanish. They return, whether as waves of water, balances of force, or echoes in the human heart. Ecology offers another mirror. The systems of the earth thrive on reciprocity. A forest gives oxygen, and in turn, animals breathe it and return carbon dioxide. Rain nourishes soil, soil grows food, food sustains life, and the cycle feeds back into itself. When one part of the web is broken, forests cut too quickly, oceans overdished, rivers poisoned, the balance falters, and consequences ripple outward. Here, karma speaks not in metaphors of gods or scales, but in collapsing fisheries, shifting climates, and disappearing species. The earth remembers, and it answers. Climate change, in this sense, is the modern face of karma. Generations of burning fuel, of taking more than giving, of treating the earth as limitless, return to us now in storms, droughts, and rising seas. The rhythm of return is not punishment, but balance, asserting itself. What we put into the air comes back in the air. What we do to the soil comes back in the harvest. The echo is planetary. Psychology, too, traces this same law through the pathways of the mind. Acts of kindness ripple outward, altering the moods of those who receive them. A smile softens another face, which in turn softens another, until a small act has echoed across dozens of lives. Cruelty does the same. A sharp word wounds, the wounded carry their pain into other encounters, and harm multiplies. The cycles may be invisible, but studies in social contagion confirm them. Emotions, like viruses, spread anger, breeding anger. Generosity breeding generosity. The karma of the heart becomes the psychology of networks. Neuroscience deepens this picture. Each act we repeat strengthens pathways in the brain. To practice cruelty is to etch cruelty into the self, until it becomes the mind's default. To practice compassion is to train the brain in gentleness, until kindness flows more readily. What we do shapes not only the world outside us, but the very architecture within. Here, karma is neuroplasticity, the self returned to itself, molded by its own choices. Even economics reflects this rhythm. Choices of greed or exploitation eventually destabilize the systems that sustain them. Wealth concentrated too heavily in one corner of society eventually starves the rest, leading to unrest, collapse, or rebalancing. Conversely, economies rooted in trust and fairness create stability, which in turn nurtures growth. Once again, cause becomes effect, effect becomes cause. In cycles that mirror the teachings of the ancients, technology, though seemingly detached, carries its own echoes. A post on a digital platform can ripple across the globe in minutes. Words typed in. Solitude return magnified in praise or in backlash, weaving webs of consequence faster than ever before. Digital karma moves at the speed of light. In this new world, the truth is sharper. Nothing online is ever gone. Every action leaves its trace. Every trace has its return. And beneath all these systems, physical, ecological, psychological, economic, digital, lies the same law, interconnection. Nothing stands alone. Every cause leans on another. Every effect touches more than its origin. The ancients called it karma, mana, balance, or measure for measure. Today, we call it conservation, ecology, feedback loops, or systems theory. But the rhythm remains the same. What goes out returns. Modern science even points to subtler echoes. Quantum physics shows us a world where observation itself alters outcomes, where particles entangle and influence one another across vast distances. While not the same as moral return, these mysteries remind us that the universe is stranger, more interconnected, and more responsive than we once believed. The boundary between action and reaction is porous. The act of looking, choosing, or intending carries weight. In the language of ecology, the term feedback loop captures what ancient traditions knew by other names. Positive feedback loops amplify, negative ones stabilize. Human life, too, is filled with these loops. Habits reinforce themselves. Cultures teach behaviors that circle back into the people who live within them. Every cycle, whether in weather or in will, speaks the same truth. Actions echo, yet in this scientific age, the idea of return need not inspire only dread. It can inspire responsibility. To know that no deed is without ripple is to realize the immense power of even the smallest act. A single choice of kindness, a single gesture of restraint, can alter a web that extends farther than we see. Likewise, each harm done carries more weight than we intend. The modern vision of karma is one of awareness. The world is listening, and it answers. Thus, the story continues. The laws of physics, the cycles of earth, the structures of the mind, the flows of society, all remind us that deeds are not isolated. They echo, they ripple, they return. The ancients dressed this truth in myth and sacred story. We dress it now in science and systems, but the heartbeat beneath remains the same. Karma still hums, though now it speaks through conservation laws, ecological chains, psychological contagions, and feedback loops. The modern mind may not bow to gods of balance, but it bows, whether it knows it or not, to the same rhythm of return. Closing reflections. The circle gently ends. The circle has carried us far. We have walked with sages and prophets, with poets and philosophers, with scientists and mystics. Each one, in their own tongue, has whispered a truth that feels both eternal and familiar. What goes out returns. From the hymns of India, where karma was sung as a law stretching across lifetimes, to the scriptures of Greece, where justice was imagined as a goddess weighing the scales of fate. From the voices of Africa, where the ancestors taught that what we give to the village is what the village gives back, to the frozen tundras of the Arctic, where hunters believed that every animal returned in spirit, blessing or burden, depending on how it had been treated. Everywhere, the same song, different notes, different languages, but the same rhythm beneath, outward, and home. Again we began with law, with karma as cause and effect, with the inevitability of deeds returning like shadows following the body. But the longer we listened, the more that stern law softened into something else. It was not only punishment, not only reward, but something quieter, a rhythm, a reminder. When you plant kindness, you will see kindness bloom, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but never lost. When you harm, the wound circles back in your body, in your mind, in your world. Not as wrath, but as echo. Not as curse, but as symmetry. Even our modern sciences, clothed in equations and charts, cannot escape this rhythm. Energy is never destroyed. Forests respond to the care or the neglect they receive. Communities reflect the love or cruelty of those within them. What we give, in some form, we meet again. And so the circle closes. As the night deepens, you are no longer with doctrines or systems, but with music, the music of return. It is the sound of a heartbeat, steady and faithful. It is the tide pulling out, then back again. It is the breath you take, the breath you release, and the breath that comes once more to fill you. The circle is not harsh. It is gentle. It does not strike like a hammer. It turns like a wheel, slowly, faithfully, endlessly. And in that motion, there is no reason for fear. To walk with the circle is simply to walk with awareness, to know that every step, every word, every gesture joins the music and becomes part of its return. Think now of all the echoes you have heard tonight, the sowing and reaping of the Christian parables, the measure for measure of the Jewish sages, the scales of the Quran, precise but softened with mercy, the circles of the Sufis, where every act was a reflection of the heart, the laws of the earth, the feedback loops of nature, the energies of physics all humming together in harmony. It is one song, played through many instruments, one river, many streams. And where does it end? Perhaps it does not. Perhaps there is no end at all, only movement, only turning, only returning. Perhaps the gift of this circle is not certainty, but trust, that nothing is wasted, nothing is meaningless, nothing vanishes. The world remembers, the heart remembers, the circle remembers. So as you rest now, you do not need to hold tightly to lessons or doctrines. You need only breathe with the rhythm already within you. Outward, inward, giving, receiving, beginning, returning. This is the way of the universe, the way of the spirit, the way of life itself. The circle gently ends and gently begins again.